Good evening.
Minute after you.
We'll call the meeting to order. This is a planning board meeting, and we have a not very lengthy agenda. The agendas are near the door if you want to pick one up. I assume you are some abutters here. At the beginning of each meeting, there's a time for public comment. So you, as members of the public, might want to know that if you wish to speak, you need to come to that microphone over there. So you stand and you walk over there and give us your name and the reason why you're speaking. And then you can say whatever you want to say. But please don't say it from your chair. Go over there. That connects to FCTV so the people at home can hear the whole meeting, which would be good. So is there any...
It can't be about anything that's on the agenda.
Oh, yes. And I've been reminded, you may not speak during public comment on anything that's on the agenda. So it's not time for extra licks, it's time for a different subject. Is there anyone who wishes to speak during public comment? So far, there hasn't been ever. Okay. Now, we're going to begin on our agenda. First, we begin with a couple of approvals not required, and then a public hearing, and so forth. I don't think it will be an exceptionally long meeting. I hope not. Paul, do we have the minutes of our last meeting?
Yeah, I recommend approval of the minutes of August 13th, 2024, as written.
Second?
Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, approval not required. The applicant is Victoria Gaw. The plan of land to combine two lots into one at 51 Garrison Road. Who is going to speak on that? You are the owner?
Yeah.
The owner and the applicant. As you can see from the plot plan, the current structure goes between two lots. The original house was built on 18A. The original owners bought the second lot and put up the garage on the second lot without ever joining the two lots. I might add that the septic system is also on the second lot, 20A, and we're requesting to remove the lot line and combine it into one lot.
Okay. Any questions or
I
comments?
move endorsement.
Is there a second?
Second?
Comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The line separating them is gone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Robert G. Weeks, a plan of land to divide one lot into two at 774 Palmer Ave. We'll get that up on the screen. Mr. Bunker.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. Who prepared this plan. You might know this as the Fieldcrest Farm at the corner of Palmer and Sipawissa Road. About 6.6 acres or so, and we're taking off the front of the lot is in zoning district RB along Sipawissa Road, and the back is in RA, creating one lot fronting on Sipawissa Road. There's 40,020 square feet, which is the minimum, just over the minimum required, has the lot width and more than enough frontage, and then the remaining backland, almost 8 acres, with 100 feet of frontage on Palmer Ave and more than enough frontage in area, or lot width in area.
Right, so that's just 100 feet that you've carved out there onto Palmer Ave?
That's 100 feet, yes.
Yeah.
102 or something like that?
Any questions from the board? No. Could we have a motion?
I move endorsement.
Second?
Second?
Questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on. I'm going to, unless, Jed, there's some reason why we really shouldn't do this, to switch the order here, because what we were going to have is a public hearing about parking in a front yard, and then a public meeting about a site plan that establishes the front yard, and I'd like to switch those.
Absolutely.
If that's okay. So, taking it out of order, we'll open a public meeting for Falmouth Concrete Corporation. Mr. Clower, I think you're speaking for them. This is a site plan review application for a 9,963 square foot industrial manufacturing building. And I think it's not 0 Thomas Landers, I think it's 475.
The abutting property is 475.
Right.
So this
Oh, is that
particular
why it was
lot
0?
is an unnumbered lot because there's no structure there currently.
Ah,
So the
okay.
assessor has it reflected as 0 Thomas B. Landers.
Ah, okay, because you put 0 Thomas Landers in on a Google map, and it shows at the corner there, at the front of,
There's a few,
Which means it
there's a few
doesn't have a number.
zeros.
no, I see that now, but
Yeah.
it, okay.
Yeah, there's a few zeros on.
There's a lot of
especially on a street
zeros.
like Thomas B. Landers, or, you know, if you go to East Falmouth Highway and hit 0 East Falmouth Highway, you're gonna get about 30 of them, so.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, thank you. My education continues. So if you would speak on 0 Thomas Landers.
Of course.
Oh, public notice.
Madam Chair, the the notice of this public hearing was published on August 9th, 2024, and August 16th. In addition, 3 butters were notified by regular mail.
Thank you. Okay, now,
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I know Melinda was kind enough to pull up the plans, but I'm just a little more comfortable going off the PDFs I have, which are the same ones that Melinda has. So for the record, Kevin Clower, I'm an attorney here in town, and I'm representing the applicants, Falmouth Concrete Corporation, who are the owners of 475 Thomas B. Landers, which is the present location of Falmouth Ready Mix, and also this property, which is 0 Thomas B. Landers, the subject of tonight's application. I'm joined tonight by Kathy and Al Moniz, who are the owners of Falmouth Ready Mix, and also Joao Wankera, who is with Cape Wide Enterprises. So the Monizes, the Falmouth Concrete Corp., are seeking to construct a 9,963 square foot manufacturing building. This site, 0 Thomas B. Landers, is and will continue to be tied into the existing operation at 475 Thomas B. Landers. The building proposed is for the manufacturing of large-scale concrete blocks. That's an activity that's already taking place on the site. However, this building will allow it to be done indoors in all weather. It is an industrial-style manufacturing building with a number of garage bays. It's intended to house only a few employees. The anticipation is somewhere between 1 and, at the high end, 5 employees. We propose 10 parking spaces, which the building commissioner has agreed is sufficient for the intended use. And given the size of the building and the location of the proposed parking in the front yard, this requires both site plan review and a special permit from this board. I know they're on the agenda as 2 separate items. I have one presentation for you this evening. So what I'd suggest is I go through the rest of the presentation, and then you could vote on them separately. But I think that would probably be the best way to address it, rather than repeating myself,
thank you.
boring everyone even more than I already am. So this site is 1.5 acres, and it's zoned in the LIA zoning district. The proposed building will result in lot coverage by structures of 14.9%, where 40% is allowed. Lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking of 51.75, where up to 70% is allowed. So well under both of those allowable thresholds. The building will comply with all setback and lot coverage requirements. The proposed parking of 10 spaces has been calculated under the catch-all provision of 240-14.1E, which says parking space is adequate to accommodate all normal demand as determined by the building commissioner. The referral from Mr. Street within the staff report does indicate that he feels that this is sufficient. The traffic flow on site and off site will continue to tie into the existing traffic flow at 475. There's no change to that existing traffic flow or site design outside of this area of development. So in addition to the site plan review, this does require a special permit under 240-11-5B for parking located in the front yard. As you can see, the parking is located in the front, as with most other properties in this area. That allows for less disturbance of site and maintenance of a buffer to the AGAA zoning district to the east and north of this site. And it's very similar to the abutting parcel and most of the abutting parcels in the area. And I would say certainly not a significant departure from what's currently on site. So the applicants have maintained a business in town for many years. They're continuing to improve and reinvest in both the property and the business. I believe that this project meets the criteria for site plan review, approval, and for a special permit under 240-11-5B. I would be glad to address any questions that the board might have at this time.
Jim?
I wanted to bring something up. we've kind of had a change. This building is just a few hundred feet shy of having to go to the Cape Cod Commissions for its size. And it seems we're getting a pattern. We've got a lot of 9,500 square foot buildings. And we no longer do site plan design review. We no longer look at elevations with color. We've kind of just look at the box and the elevations planned and we approve them. These are big buildings. That's only a couple hundred feet away from go to the Cape Cod Commission. And I can remember previously on this street, when I was chairman, we had elevations done, we looked at the windows, there was colored drawings, we got to see it, and not just a couple of lines on a thing, and building a 10,000 square foot building, which we're gonna do 2 of them tonight. And we're not really do we have a design review committee anymore?
I'd like to answer that. I believe that we do, and we
Who
are
is
it.
it?
And I think when you were doing this, these metal buildings were relatively new, and we were quite interested in them, and we're still very interested in them, but now we're familiar with them.
But we-
Why would we put them to the expense of showing us a picture of something with which we're quite familiar as board? What would that do for us?
Do you know what the outside of the building looks like?
Yes, they gave us elevations, didn't you look?
I did. I read it carefully. I just think that we should be talking about the design a little bit. To me, what makes that design of a good-looking building that's going to be here for a long time is roof lines and fenestrations and doors. I'm not to make them look ridiculous, but just to have some care to it. And if the rest of the board doesn't feel this way, I'm fine with it. But just remember, there's 2 of them tonight. These are just a hair under going to the Cape Cod Commission. I'm just expressing my opinion, which I know differs from yours. I just want to say it publicly.
I appreciate your saying it. It actually doesn't differ from mine, but this is a different kind of building. Is there any member of the board that'd like to comment on this?
Ms. Harris, just if I can respond very quickly to Mr. Fox's comment. Jim, I agree. I think that the character and design of buildings is very important in what we allow in town. However, I would point out that Thomas B. Landers is the corridor that's cited specifically for buildings of this nature. This is designed entirely for commercial and industrial style buildings, and this is going to be very in line with almost every other property along that road, which is exactly, what's intended in that corridor.
Pat, you wanted to say?
Yeah. One thing that's not said is that this is a steel building, and steel buildings come manufactured in different colors, but we're not told what this is going to be, and I'm curious.
I believe it's a gray. This is Jao Wankera from Cape Light Enterprises.
Good evening, Joel Juncated, Cape White Construction. Most of the time, the buildings is gray walls, black roof, and on this particular building, I think we're going to do a stone chair rail. We're going to look very attractive, actually.
that shown in the
I don't know if you guys. I don't know if you guys.
I didn't see that, I'm sorry. I wouldn't have brought it up if I saw that kind of detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Mashpee Industrial Park, I own a lot of the stuff in there. Our buildings is beautiful. Martin do a great job,
That sounds great. Now, another comment I'd like to make, actually probably 2 more. Right now, we have 10 parking spaces, but if the building were to change over, I think our building commissioner said that this could have up to 34 parking spaces, if I remember what I was reading. And I'm wondering if perhaps we ought to mention that if there is any change, it would have to come back to us in the decision. I don't know whether,
We typically put that as a decision.
but I didn't know in this case, since it's industrial, and it could be.
Yeah, it's typically a standard condition.
Okay, the other thing I want to say is I was looking also at the landscaping. That is gonna look nice. I know
It's
it's
gonna
a
look nice. They even
minimal,
named the
but
kind of trees that they're going
Yeah.
to be getting. Sounded
really,
good.
really nice, thank you.
Paul,
I just had a question. I can't read the height of the building on these drawings. How high is
18 feet.
the drawings you've given us? Can't read them.
I think it says 18
It
feet.
is 34 feet, 6 3/8 inches.
34 feet?
Yep, 6 3/8 inches.
Well, I agree with Jim, it's a bit of a game. 3% under the 10,000 cutoff, and it's clearly a game being played to try to avoid the Cape Cod Commission.
But it's an understandable one. Very understandable.
I mean, I think,
Bob or John?
we see a lot of buildings designed exactly this way for this purpose. And that's just, when you have a cutoff, a hard and fast cutoff like that, that's what's gonna happen.
Right. Bob?
9,963, just not much less than 10,000.
Right, but you end up going before another regulatory board that ends up taking longer. It's more expensive. I mean, we're trying to reduce the amount of regulation and overhead that people have to go through in order to do business in this town. And as far as the looks of the building, I agree with Jim that, but it's the location of where something is. If this was on Falmouth Harbor, I think it would be a totally different situation where we would have something because it would be more visible. Thomas Landers Road, I drive it every day. It's an industrial area. There are dozens of buildings along there that are similar to this. One has a dance studio in it that's very similar to this. So, like I said, I agree with Jim to a point, but in this location, I think whatever goes in there is fine.
John?
No, I agree with what Bob's saying. It's a perfect location for it. And they've been in business at that location next door, what, 30 years, 40 years? And they've always done a fantastic job with their property, and I'm happy to see them expanding their business here instead of somewhere else. But the site plan looks good to me.
I'd like to second that. It happens, I live in North Falmouth, and to get to that side of town, I go across Thomas Landers several times a week. And what I have noticed over the years is how carefully the businesses there keep their land. And look how far back from a road this is set, and there's not a woodland, but a park-like area with a lot of trees, and they've taken the trouble to name the trees they intend to plant. I think they're doing a good job aesthetically, so I don't think that we have any reason to call them on that. It's going to continue to look good, and that whole street looks pretty good. So
This isn't to say that we're giving up site plan review.
We are
because
definitely
think,
not giving up site plan
In different
review.
situations, we can call that up. We still have that purview and that discretion.
Correct.
So,
When it's useful, when it's needed, but not as a technicality that you have to make it through that hoop.
I just want to comment, I don't think it's too hard to show the color of the building in a little bit more detail, and that's why I brought it up, instead of just plain white, black and white on lines. But if that's acceptable, I won't bring it up again. That was my opinion, and I think I have the right to say that.
Of course you do.
So, Mr. Fox, I would just add to that, especially with some of these industrial-style buildings, getting personalized plans can be difficult, because they say, this is our plan. And
They could show it to us, though.
so, but I'm saying, these plans are, and I don't want to belabor the point, but these plans, this is what, it's on the Cape Wide construction letterhead, but this is what came from the industrial company. They say, this is our plan. We'll get into it in the next hearing, because I actually have a color rendering of that one because of its location, and it took months to get.
I've seen them. I've seen a lot of Morton buildings, and I know that they give you colored elevations, and they have it. We could have seen, all I'm saying, that could have been shown to us. I know that's available. I know they're a great company. We've seen built over time. The information's there. I just thought it should have been discussed tonight. That's all.
Point made. The suggestion is to continue the hearing. Public comment on the building, on anything that's been said? No?
Ms. Sarah, why are we continuing?
That's my question. Suggestion is to continue, but I wonder why we don't close it and ask for a positive motion for our next meeting.
You certainly can. It's just that we have not received a referral from the engineering division as of yet. So typically, we would receive one of those, make sure that they've reviewed it and that you're comfortable with it. But we can certainly provide a positive motion for you or have one ready in the event that that referral comes back nice
If
and
that
clean.
referral comes back, any problem with that?
No.
No? Then let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have the special permit.
Yes, we need a special permit on the parking in the front. Do we have a motion?
You have to read the public hearing notice.
Right. You'll have to open the hearing for
Oh,
it
sorry.
and read the notice for the abutters.
Okay, hearing is open. The public meeting notice, Paul.
Ms. Sarah, I'm sorry, before, was there an actual vote taken on that last motion?
We don't need to do that. We're just going to get the motion at our next meeting.
Just making sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe.
Meeting, public meeting notice for the site plan review for this project was published on August 9th, 2024.
This is the one on
Three
the,
abutters were notified by regular mail.
okay, this is the public hearing for the special permit application.
Apologies.
I thought I read this. Didn't I just read
They're
it?
both the same then?
They're technically both the same, but when you're opening your public hearing, you need to
Read
go
it
through the
twice.
notice.
Public hearing for the special permit application was published on August 9th, 2024, and August 16th, 2024. And three abutters were notified by regular mail.
Okay, here we are. Do you want to say something?
I just did.
I don't think we need to. We need a motion.
Well, it's the same motion, is that we would like to have a positive decision.
No, I think you want to.
Close the hearing first, so you'd want to have public comment, if any. If no public comment,
Right.
close the hearing, and then you can deliberate.
There was no comment. We're closing the hearing.
Okay.
Go.
All right, so having closed the hearing, I move that, no, we don't.
You have to vote to close
We
the
have to
hearing.
vote
to
that
close
we
the
close the hearing, okay.
Motion to
This
close
has
the
gotten
hearing.
us all confused, hasn't it? I move that we close the hearing then.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now,
Now, that we seek a positive motion that we can vote on at our next planning board meeting, and that we are currently
can't we just
waiting.
make a motion to approve a special permit?
If you have no issues with the parking in the front yard, absolutely.
If we make the motion
Okay.
and get a second, we can discuss that.
Yes.
Right, so make a motion to approve
I
it.
move that we approve the special permit application for parking in the front yard for Falmouth Concrete Corporation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there
Jen,
any
can I ask-
discussion?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because it's typically a 7-member board. Do we need a 5 out of 7 or 4 out of 6?
5 out of 7.
Is there any discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, we'll call on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
So we will draft for the September 10th meeting, a positive motion for site plan review,
Yeah.
also a positive motion for the special permit, and you can read them both into the record on the 10th, provided that the engineering referral comes back with no issues on the site plan review. Does that sound good?
Right.
Very good.
Right.
That when we're
Confusing
able to move
combined.
through it in a single meeting, we should do it.
As long as you're comfortable with it.
We were. Okay, next up. We're clearing the decks here. Roy E. Achenbach, site plan review application to construct a detached accessory apartment at 10 Riddle Hill Road. Public notice, Paul?
Yes. Public meeting notice for this project was published on August 9th, 2024, and 8 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Ready? Hi, I'm Denise Benoli. I'm an architect that worked on this project, and I am here representing Roy Achenbach, who's the owner and friend and client. He's got, the property address is 10 Riddle Hill Road. The property lot size is 40,587 square feet. There's a single, it's in a single-family residence district, RA. There's an existing house on the property that's approximately 3,000 square feet. There's a little pool structure, pool house, and then already an existing garage that's there, detached two-car garage, 26 by 32 garage with a dormer on it. Right now is currently unfinished space up there, so, but it's the dormer, the windows. So what Mr. Achenbach is asking to do is put a dwelling unit on the second floor of that already existing building. The existing house is about 3,000 square feet. Let me see if I can do this. Nope. Oh, here we go. here's some plans of the existing house, which I wasn't the architect for. It's been, Roy's been for 22 years at this point. And the existing garage is there. You can see that's the way the structure already looks. It already has the dormer on it, already has the windows on the second floor. So the existing house is about 3,000 square feet. The square footage of the unit on the second floor would be about 550 square feet. So that's less than the 800 square feet maximum, and it's about 18% of the existing house, so well under 40% of the existing house. The height of the garage is 22 feet. We were very careful to keep the house below that, and Roy believes the town already has a certified ridge elevation for that, and if they don't have it on record already, he can provide it, because we're very careful to maintain maximum 22 foot for that. The existing house has 4 bedrooms, and there's a 4-bedroom septic in the front of the property. I'll see if I can go back to the site plan. And the new unit would have 1 bedroom, and there'll be a separate septic system for that, which Mr. Achenbach has already talked with the building commissioner about, and BSS has already drawn on there. There's already 11 parking spaces. There could be more if there was any reason for it, but there's already 11. The owner lives in the house all year round, and so it would never be, he occupies it certainly for more than 7 months. He's there all year. And it will never be rented. The 2 spaces will never be rented at the same time. The lot coverage has increased from 13.68% for structures to 13.82, and that's only for the new egress stair that we put. There's going to be an egress stair on the northwest side of the building. You can see that in the drawing. I don't know if I can, look at that. Okay, there we go. So we're just putting, so the building will look exactly the same as it does now, which is consistent with the house, sidewalls, shingles, and roofing, and all of that. And all we're doing is adding an egress stair on the side over there. And the lot coverage will just increase by about 55 square feet. So it goes up like a tenth of a. And I think that's it. Do you have any questions?
Did you have some changes you needed to make on the interior of the main house?
You're gonna put a wall, take a wall down and open up one of the rooms?
So they're
One of the
not aware
bedrooms?
of that.
What?
They're not aware of that. That's just in the staff report.
Okay, I
That's
read in the
something we have
staff
to
report.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
I'm
something
sorry.
we have to discuss.
Confuse the 2 things together.
I can explain it if you want.
Okay, maybe you should.
Yes, that would be very helpful, please.
So although you have a 4-bedroom septic system for your house, and you're putting in a 1-bedroom septic for your accessory apartment, this property lies within a coastal pond overlay district, and according to the accessory apartment bylaw only, you cannot have more than 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet. And if you do, if you go over that, you have to put in a denitrification system. So you don't have to do that, you can case the opening to one of your bedrooms, which I believe was labeled a study. You could case it to 4 feet, and then you eliminate that issue.
Okay.
If you're okay with that, yeah. Okay.
You're saying
That was
4
your
foot opening?
recommendation?
Yeah.
It looked like it was in the plan.
I was confused. I read them
I
all.
don't think it is in the plans. No, it's not. No, I was just giving them.
I have another question. When does the new state law come in effect that kind of takes out a lot of our requirements? Because we're approving these things and putting limitations on that very soon are going to go away.
Yep, so
With all the
it's-
rental things that they're saying they're going to do, they don't have to do, when is that date?
It's 180 days from, I think, August 8th, I think the date was, so sometime in February. I don't have the exact date on me.
So shouldn't we, when
Second.
we approve these things, make that recommendation now, so then we don't have to come back, it just automatically happens, because we know it's gonna?
What do you mean?
Well, not renting it, for instance, okay? There's a couple other things, about 4 things that our bylaw has that they're no longer required, like it go to 900 square feet instead of 8, it doesn't need, the rental goes away, there's just a few things that are,
The owner occupancy.
owner
goes away.
occupancy goes away. That would be, why have them suffer through all this now, and then come back in
Well,
3
we
months and do it again?
we are changing our bylaw through town meeting, and it has to go through that process first. You can't eliminate a bylaw yet,
But don't we have to?
not until the state, so it doesn't become effective
Or until?
until February
Right, so-
2nd.
So a town can go forward to their annual town meeting in November and change it on their own, or wait till February 2nd and it changes for them.
So what happens when we put all these things in their special permit? No, it's not a special permit, it's no, it is a
So-
special permit because it's detached. Does this also have to go to,
But that
For
goes to
now,
the ZBA.
yes,
I know, but that's gonna go away too.
yes.
It's in flux.
Okay, well, is there any relief for these folks, or they have to come back again?
Wait
No, they
till
don't have
after
to come back
February.
again.
That's the only
I think
relief.
that's the only,
But will they have to go to the ZBA because it's detached?
Yes.
It's within a building.
For now, they do, until the bylaws changed.
still
It's
detached.
still detached, so they have to go to the ZBA. They have to jump through a bunch of hoops that they don't have to do in February.
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't think, if there's no solution, there's no solution, but
Well,
at
the
least they should be
solution is-
aware of it, that they should come back, and things get better if you, in February.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for Roy, he can come up and talk himself, but I think that everything we're agreeing to is perfectly okay with him. You know, he's always going to live there, he's not trying to,
You
so
don't
I
have to
think
come
that's why he
February
was
is my
not
point.
waiting. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, you don't, in February, you won't have that.
Yeah, believe me, I have a couple other clients that are waiting.
Should be interesting.
But Royce is figuring everything he needs to comply to on the little pamphlet's fine with him. But,
I got
that's
the
why he
answer I
decided to
wanted,
go
it's
forward.
February, I was not aware of the date.
Yep.
That's really what I was looking for.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I move to approve.
Yeah, I think we should instruct the staff to draft a positive motion.
All right, so if we could have a positive motion for our next meeting, which would be September 10th,
Yes, ma'am.
and we'll act on it then. All right, thank you very much, nice project.
Just so the applicant knows, essentially what happens at that meeting is the board will read into the record some important points of the decision. So you do not have to attend, but you can if you want to.
But you still have to go to the ZBA till February.
Just so I know, that's going to be at a public hearing, but we don't need to attend, is that what you said?
Yeah, next meeting, when we read it, when they read the decision and vote it, you do not have to attend.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Looks great.
And now we come to our final applicant for the evening, Falmouth Manufacturing Center LLC, a site plan review application to construct a 9,960 square foot building intended for manufacturing on a portion of a lot setback approximately 300 feet from 550 East Falmouth Highway. And speaking.
Notice.
Public notice, please.
Madam Chair, the public meeting notice, excuse me, for this project was published on August 9th, 2024. 39 abutters are notified by regular mail.
Okay, Kevin.
Hello again. For the record, Kevin Clower. I'm before you representing Falmouth Manufacturing Center LLC, who's the leasehold interest owner in this property, which is a 1.94 acre portion of a larger parcel at 550 East Falmouth Highway. This project was before this board about 3 years ago. Paul Glenn brought it before this board, and it was approved. The site plan review was approved. And we're not really changing much, to be honest. We're changing the orientation of the building. So we're seeking to modify the site plan review decision that was issued in November 2021, which allowed for the construction of a 9,960 square foot steel building. The applicant is simply seeking to modify the location and orientation of the proposed building, which is to be determined, to be turned at approximately a 90-degree angle from the prior approval. So as noted, this 1.94 acre section is part of a much larger 21.87 acre parcel at 550 East Falmouth Highway. The building will remain 124.5 feet by 80 feet with the same roof height, same bays, and same layouts as was previously approved. The access will remain over a designated access and utility easement, which is to be a 20-foot wide paved asphalt driveway. The water, as before, will be a new 8-inch main coming off the 12-inch main on East Falmouth Highway, which will terminate at a hydrant in the southwest corner of the leased area. The parking will remain at 34 spaces, which have been provided on site. And the proposed use is for manufacturing base. Previously, this board approved it as boat manufacturing. It's not to be boat manufacturing. It is simply manufacturing. Cabinets, among other things, will be constructed within these bays. So, as I said, minimal changes from the last approval. We will be seeking approval from the zoning board because there are existing special permits on the property. As was noted in the referral from the zoning board, previously there were some issues with the auto dealer not being in compliance with the existing special permits. That issue has been addressed, so we will be submitting an application to the zoning board to modify the existing permits as well. So this proposal is in line with the surrounding area. It is manufacturing, which is a by right use within the LIA zoning district. And it's very similar to what the board previously approved 3 years ago. Therefore, I believe this meets the criteria for modification of the existing site plan review approval, and I'd be glad to address any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Paul?
Mr. Clark, I had a couple of questions. Number one is, there's two easements shown on the west side there. One says utility easement, and the other one says access easement. That seems to go over the corner of the building, right there. Could you explain what's going on there?
So there's a paved driveway here. What's shown here in the dashed line, it comes to here, comes in and goes around the corner of the building, is what's called the 20-foot wide access and utility easement. So the width of that easement varies over the course from the street back towards this property. It doesn't go through that building here is an existing building, but as you'll see here, the easement actually comes up and jogs around that existing building.
But that building remains.
It will, yes, it's remaining.
So are they going to use the utility easement and the vehicle easement?
So this is, at this point, it's 50 feet wide. At this point, it's 40 feet wide. At this point, it's 20 feet wide. That easement will be utilized. There is an existing paved driveway that will continue to be utilized. And what we're showing here is the new area. And all of our work is within this 1.94 acre leased parcel within the site.
What's the size of the site?
21.87 acres overall.
How many?
21.87 acres overall.
Could you explain what's going on in the upper end of the site where they have the retaining wall and a drainage basin and some other things going on there?
Yep, so there are, as before, this was on the previously approved plan, there were pretty significant retaining walls. There is a drainage basin that's going in here. That was approved before. There's no real change to that. As I said, the only real change is the orientation of this building. So that drainage and retaining walls were all part of the initial approval. And there was a condition in the original site plan review approval, just noting that that will need, given the size of the retaining walls, will need a structural engineer and building permits issued for them.
It looks like the ground elevation is around 30, and the bottom of that basin is around 15.
Find one with elevations. Yeah, so here we're at 30, and as you noted down here, it is, the bottom elevation is at 15. The retaining wall is 10 feet, I believe.
That's an existing retaining wall.
No, the retaining wall is proposed.
Previously approved,
Yes.
never built.
But that's pure drainage for the entire site?
Well, it's certainly to address anything that's done within this area, within our 1.94 acre parcel. Much of this site is undeveloped. There's about 6 acres that are zoned LIA, and the remaining 15 is zoned public use. So most of the use of this property takes place in the existing LIA area.
What's the holding tank?
That's the septic for the building. The septic system for.
So it's going to be pumped out?
Actually, I think that's part of the manufacturing. That is, I take that back, is the leaching
I don't see
system.
an indication of a wastewater system here.
Well, we have a number of plans, so bear with me.
There's a huge wastewater specification, isn't there? Shows the whole page.
Yeah,
I couldn't read it all.
so this is all drainage system
Drainage
detail.
system.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the discussion when this was here before dealt with that, protecting the bog and the land beyond it, that retaining wall. Isn't that true?
That's part of it, yes.
Yeah.
But it's also because it's Frank Berry and,
So it is a dual containment industrial
Yeah, it goes
wastewater
right
holding
down to the
tank.
river.
yeah.
So,
Did that answer your question?
Who's the owner of parcel 1? And what's the access to parcel 1?
where's parcel 1, Mr. Dreyer?
It's the remainder of the 21 acres.
So it's all owned by the Sinrock Realty Trust, and,
The same owner?
yep.
Because I drove up there and it was very confusing as to which end is and how big this was and, okay. So is there a septic system or is there not?
The $2,500 gallon holding tank is a dual containment, it's a 2,500 gallon dual containment industrial wastewater holding tank.
It's just a holding tank.
So that would need to be pumped.
It's not a treatment.
No, because.
So they'll pump that out.
Yep, would need to be pumped, and this is all gonna be subject to Board of Health review and approval as well.
So it's like a tight tank almost?
I think so.
That's what they're saying. So there isn't any drainage into the, there's no nitrogen flow or anything, everything's retained and pumped.
And
It's because it's right on a river.
and the drainage system there is drainage, is not wastewater, but just drainage.
Okay, Pat, I think you had something you wanted to
Yeah.
say?
So tight tank, but they're gonna be doing cabinetry and stuff like that. When it came before us before, they were party boats that were gonna be shipped to Florida, tiki boats or something.
Boat manufacturing, yes.
Yeah, boat manufacturing, but you said it's not gonna be that now, they're gonna be doing.
So there are a few bays within the building, and, one of the things he's talked about is cabinet manufacturing. And, he being the owner, Alex Kahn, will likely retain at least one of the bays for himself, which could well be boat manufacturing, but that's not going to be the primary necessarily.
Okay, because when you're doing manufacturing, you have certain wastes. How are they going to be taken care of that won't impinge on the river?
Sure, so everything right now is fed to a tight tank, which would have to be pumped. So there's no wastewater that's being discharged into the ground here.
No leaching field at all.
Not that I can see on these plans, no.
But that's even a Board of Health issue on ours, right?
Are there any other questions about things that are ours? John?
None,
No?
no.
Bob? No. Okay.
One final question. What's being manufactured here?
So, as I mentioned, one of the things that's being discussed is cabinet manufacturing. The owner could still desire to do some boat manufacturing there. He's done these party boats, as you mentioned, Ms. Kerfoot, which is, kind of a hobby of his. But there's, they haven't determined all the potential uses there, but it would be limited to manufacturing, which is, again, a by right use within that district.
Depending on the manufacturer, is there a large water use for the manufacturing process?
So they're going to be limited by whatever system they have in place. It'll be
Yeah, that's my
self-limiting
point.
in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If the board is comfortable, we can ask for a positive motion at our September 10th meeting.
Well, again, Jim was concerned about what the building was going to look
Yeah,
like.
but
This
you
is
guys said
even-
you don't want to do that.
No, we said not in that instance out there. In
No,
this
but
instance,
he
it's
could show
very
us the
visible.
elevations here. Look at them.
Okay.
They
Well, that's
came-
what I was expecting to see on the other one, at least see the color. Is there any office in that?
They didn't appear to be.
No, I don't believe so, Mr. Fox.
It's just open space.
Yeah, open bays.
It's the same plan we approved before.
Right.
Yeah, and it's also way back from the street, too. Was this
Yeah,
even
this is over
visible from
300
Route
this is
28?
It's probably visible, but it's over 300 feet.
Yeah.
If you look at the site plan, this is the car dealership here, I believe. So, you're looking at over 313 feet.
And how far does it drop down? It's a lot lower than the property in front, too, isn't it?
Let me go back to the topographical map. That was the topographical map. So, let's see, this is at about elevation 33 here. This is 34, so it's about the same
It's
elevation.
not falling off that much.
No.
This is a smaller building than we saw previously. This is 18 feet tall at the start. It's about 21 feet at the ridge.
That's the 18-foot. I drove back there the last time we were looking at this about the party boats. I've forgotten the party boat part, but it is pretty flat getting back there, and that whole outline section that's held within the retaining walls is quite flat. There's a lot of space for boat storage, parking, whatever.
The other question we had is, because it's all gravel, is they show all these nice little lines for parking, but you can't mark gravel. So our question was, how are you gonna delineate the parking spaces? They're on the plan.
Sure. So, you know, we see, one, I think that 34 spaces for this is too much. It's based on a requirement of one space for 300 square feet. There's simply not going to be that much demand for parking, which is why we had a 10 parking space proposal in our last one. If they need to delineate spaces, if that becomes a need, they can do so with markers on the ground. I've seen that done quite often, almost like, wooden lines. If you see certain restaurants have cones delineating parking spaces, I mean, there's a number of ways you could do it if need be. I don't think it's going to be necessary in this case.
A question on the, I think it's a zoning question, but parking, when I built parking lots and it was gravel, I had to go get a special permit for it not being paved. Do they have to do that at this with?
So we're going to the zoning board.
So they have to ask for a special permit because they're using gravel instead of pavement?
So we're going to the zoning board because there are existing special permits affecting the 21
Okay,
acre
they're already
parcel.
there.
So what will be, one of the things we'll be requesting is alternate parking surface,
Okay,
in addition to the modification of the existing permits.
right.
And if
That was
they,
just from my own understanding, I just wondered if
and if
something
they were to
changed.
say no to that, we'd be back before this board.
Okay. I prefer to be gravel with this site. I think we just have the runoff going,
Yeah.
we don't want to be sending water to the river. I like the way it is.
Okay, Jed, do you see any reason why we shouldn't go forward with a positive motion at our next meeting?
No, I don't.
Okay then, and it seems to be okay with the board?
Okay, I move that we request that the staff create a positive motion on this plan for our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate
you.
your time. Speedy work tonight.
Yes. However, we're not quite through. Now, planning board discussion. This might take some time. Now we're going to look at what the subcommittee that used to be called recodification, but is not any longer. Now it's changes to the bylaws. We're going to take a look at what we are putting forward.
Yes.
Ted, do you want to walk us through them?
Sure. So included in your packet are 6 articles for town meeting,
Okay, good
Thank
night.
you.
draft articles. Tonight's discussion is it's meant to have a discussion about the content, but also the number of articles. And I will walk through each one of them individually. I'll sort of hit the high notes, and then I can answer any questions that you might have. So, from top to bottom, and top being the smallest number of, go ahead.
Before we begin, could you remind the rest of the board who has actually been working on this subcommittee?
Sure.
So that we are aware and any public that's listening is aware?
Right. To be clear, it is a working group.
Yeah.
So the working group consists of yourself and Pat from the planning board. There are 2 members from the zoning board of appeals, Frank Duffy and Suzanne, I don't remember her last name. Murphy, thank you. There's also an at-large member, and then there's staff. So there is planning staff, there's zoning administrator, there's the building commissioner, town council, and I believe that
And
runs.
the 2 Bobs,
Yes, and of course, our 2 consultants, Bob Mitchell and Bob Richard.
right.
We've been working over the course of the last approximately 5 to 6 months on a number of articles. One in particular, which is Article 10, your non-conforming structures, uses, and lots. As you remember, that was part of their original contract. They were going to provide a brand-new non-conforming section, bring it up to standards that match state law, but also improve the language that's currently in there. That is one of the zoning articles that's included in your packet. That was going to be the last one, only because it's 240, section 10. In terms of the first one is Mr. Cod. That's the mixed residential and commercial overlay district. That is 240, section 7.5. So in order, which I can start with, Mr. Cod, the amendments to Mr. Cod were brought about.
Paul said he doesn't have
Here you
it.
go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else not have them? Okay.
Everybody else good? Okay. So the amendments to Mr. Cod, as everyone's aware, were brought to our attention and to your attention because of confusion related to an application that went through the Mr. Cod process. So the amendments that you see in the draft article seek to make it very clear that the permit granting authority lies wholly within the planning board's realm, so there's no requirement to go elsewhere. But it does make an important change. Instead of being site plan review, and again, this is a proposal for you to consider. Instead of it being site plan review, it would be a special permit through the planning board, so you would be the special permit granting authority. And the reason we did that was because, first and foremost, it's consistent with the way you handle multifamily development in town. So the remainder of multifamily use within town is always a special permit. And that's at 6 units per acre or up to 8 units per acre. So it's
With the planning board.
no, so those are, I believe, through the ZBA,
Oh,
multifamily
the other
use.
ones? The other, not this one.
That's the
other, yeah.
multifamily use category, the 6 unit per acre and the 8 unit per acre. However, you are partially correct because senior care retirement district was recently amended at town meeting. That is a special permit through the planning board, which allows a developer to go up to 8 units per acre. So,
That's where I get confused.
Yeah.
So someplace we do and someplace we don't.
right. So that's an important detail. It changes the requirement for it. The other reason we did that was because with site plan review, you are not necessarily bound to say yes every time, but there isn't a clear way for you to say no to an application other than an applicant simply not conforming to the rules that you have in place for site plan review. So the special permit gives you discretion. It allows you to, if you consider this development, a proposal development to be or detrimental to the neighborhood, you have the ability to say no at some point in the future. And then importantly, lastly, it also provides the ability for an abutter to come to a public hearing and to appeal a decision that you might render in the future. So we felt it was important to switch that over to a special permit process for those reasons.
That's really the key, they can appeal it.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
the big difference right there.
Yep. Plus, it's recorded at the Registry of Deeds. There's a lot more visibility on a mixed residential and commercial overlay district project.
I'm gonna ask a question, it's almost on target. I still see, when I go through looking at special permits, the 2-year clause, and we haven't caught them all. I was just looking, I should have made a note of it, but just a couple weeks ago, it's 3 years, right? The state has changed it. Can't we just put a blanket amendment in? It says everywhere it says 2 years if they haven't built on it, if they ever accept the permit, that now it's 3?
Pretty sure it's 3 currently in the bylaw, but I
But it still shows up.
memorize.
We did change that.
No, but it's still there.
Where?
I keep finding it in other places.
You mean in decisions?
Yes, no, in the actual, when you're reading a special permit, they relay all the requirements of the special permit every time in every bylaw. In some places, it still says 2 years.
Okay.
Is there a way to fix that,
Absolutely, yeah.
blanket-wise? Because it should be, because we can't do anything about it, right? And the state says it's 3. Am
Well,
I correct?
yeah, we can look deeper into that and wherever it does.
Try to make it, I found one just last week, but I thought we should put in some kind of notice that everywhere it says if it hasn't been exercised in 2 years, that we really mean 3 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we can look and
Even though
make
we've made
that.
all these edits, that, our bylaw is so confusing, you still find it.
It's a law.
Yeah. So I just was hoping that someplace, it could say, you know, the state changed this, every time it says, if it is an exercise, it lapses, it doesn't lapse in 2 years, it lapses in 3 years. That's the proper terminology, but it does show up.
So another, and I'm just gonna highlight some of the big picture changes for Mr. Cod. So we added some language that makes it clear that it's an overlay district. And so if an applicant chooses to go the overlay district route, they are bound by the rules and regulations found in the overlay district. There isn't picking and choosing some of the rules that you want to use here and there. It's simply you choose this route, and all the rules are described in
There's no lift up from below.
Correct. So you have a choice as an applicant, overlay or the underlying zoning. We've added a definition called multifamily development. And the reason for that, because within the bylaw itself, we've also described what can and cannot happen within a mixed-use development building. So what can happen on the first floor, what can happen up on the upper floors. So that's all very specific on what can happen within a mixed-use development. What we didn't have before was if an applicant wants to do just residential, what does that look like? And so we've added that definition as a multifamily development, and that would allow for, and here's another important change, that would allow for 20 units per acre. Before, it was 20 units per 40,000 square feet of upland. And again, to be consistent with the way we handle density in the zoning bylaw, it's always been units per acre. So again, it's a very minor difference. It's 40,000 square feet of upland versus 43,560 square feet. So now it'll be consistent with all the other units of density within the bylaw, and it'll be 20 units per acre. I know we've always said it in the past, 20 units per acre, but technically it was 20 units per 40,000 square feet of upland. So it's a much different scenario. So again, we've changed it to units
So
per
if they
acre.
had 10,000 square feet of wetlands, they could still do it? Is that what you're saying?
They would have to demonstrate that they have the ability to do a certain number of units on just the upland.
On just the uplands?
Correct, right,
But the requirement of 20 units would still, they'd have to show how it fits.
correct. On
But-
just the
But the
upland.
density could still be there.
Right. Now, it's not necessarily a big deal because, again, don't forget, Mr. Cod, that district is in your
Right.
your business zone, so there's not a lot of concern there about.
No, they
wetlands.
filled in all the wetlands, so we don't have to worry about it.
Right. Except for yesterday, there was a little bit of wetland. So again, just being consistent, making sure that that's tightened up. The other component is we made it clear that commercial accommodations cannot be used as a non-residential use in a mixed-use development. Because, and the reason for this is very important. Commercial accommodations in our zoning bylaw is a standalone item. If an applicant wants to go that route, they have to demonstrate that they have a certain lot size and they can fit within that. And that demonstrates how many units they can have based on the lot size itself.
How would that have impacted Mr. Glasso's project in,
They wouldn't have been able to combine it in that building. And that was the major issue with that application, is because if you start with commercial accommodations, it clearly says to you, you can have this number of units if you have this lot size, and you can go above that based on an incremental increase in your lot size. So essentially, you use the lot, and you say, I have 100 units based on that size. Then you come back and say, well, I want to use it again, and I want to add residential to it. That's problematic, because you're overdeveloping a parcel or a property, a lot, in a way that I don't believe anyone ever intended to be or could imagine that the future would hold. So we
and
tried to
yet
make
we
it
have,
clear.
we have allowed one, so we don't have to imagine it, there's going to be one.
Technically, that's not the way it unfolded. Well, I'll just leave it at that, because I think, it's an important, unless, of course, you want me to continue, but that is not the way it ended up. So the 545 Main Street project did not actually have commercial accommodations. It now has a seasonal workforce housing component mixed with long-term residential. So it's not technically a commercial accommodation.
Did that impact the number of rental units that would be available?
I would say yes and no, but more no than yes, if that makes any sense. It did not dictate the number of units. However, through that process, they did refine it and bring those units, the number of units down.
Remove some, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
How many?
I believe there were 4 units lost altogether, so not a lot.
Is that because of parking?
I believe there was partially due to parking, but again, I didn't follow the case all the way through the zoning board of appeals, so I don't want to misstate it, but again, where it left here, it was at 71, it's now 67, but it's totally
You know,
separate.
I'm a little confused, and Pat, I wonder if you could help me out here. I'm pretty sure I didn't miss any of the Zoom sessions. I may have, but I don't think I did.
Right.
And some of this is unfamiliar to me. When did this transpire?
It's unfamiliar to
zoning
me,
board.
too. No.
Well,
No, this.
so technically, this mixed residential, this article that we're referring to now, the working group's going to see it for the first time on Thursday. We're bringing it to you simply ahead of time so that you can discuss it amongst yourselves
Oh,
and
that
understand that we.
explains it, because
didn't
this sounds
exist.
You
really,
haven't had a chance to forget it, you haven't seen it yet.
this was really confusing.
I can understand, that would be a problem.
John,
Can we discuss this?
we're going to.
You want to wait? Some more?
I have just a couple more things, but
Okay.
it should be very, very quickly. Let's see. So the other thing we did too is we added some flexibility in your dimensional regulations or requirements in here. So there's a new section which allows for a non-conforming property to seek a special permit if they want to increase their non-conformity as it relates to setbacks and to lot coverage. There's some new language in there that addresses properties that are of a certain size that exceed a lot coverage, or I'm sorry, not exceed a lot coverage, but have a certain lot coverage. And so for properties that are under 20,000 square feet, the lot coverage is now allowable at 90%. Over 20,000 square feet, the lot coverage is limited to 70%. So again, just adding some flexibility for some of these properties. Then importantly, we added some flexibility on the building height. That's another major component here. So,
Is that 90% by building?
all 3.
Oh, total?
Yep, structures, paving, and parking,
Okay.
up to 90%.
90%.
And again, that number is just a number we use. If you're more comfortable with a different number, let us know, and of course, we'll change that before we start the public hearing process.
Okay, so give me a clue then. Who is this us?
Us, you mean the planning board itself?
No, we're hearing it now for the first time. Who cooked it up?
Ah, I see. Myself and Melinda, as well as town council's office.
Ah, it's always good to know where things come from.
Sure.
You know, parentage counts.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the work that we do through this zoning bylaw review working group is the consultants, but we also play a major role in it as well.
Oh, I know that. It's just, I was startled when so much of it was foreign. That's all.
Yeah.
So that's the gist of the changes that are being made or proposed to the Mr. Cod bylaw.
On this one.
Proposed to the planning board for
Correct.
the first time.
I have
Paul?
just an overview. When I review the minutes, many times it says Mr. Cod. And if you're reading it in the abstract, you don't know what that is. So I always add the title, Mixed Residential Commercial Overlay District, parentheses, Mr. Cod.
Sure.
I'm curious whether you want to put a parentheses in the beginning, Mr. Cod, because we keep referring to it publicly and in writing.
Okay.
If it isn't in the bylaw, it might be.
We actually took a vote years ago not to use just Mr. Cod, because it was misleading to the public. But we get into, or any code, that we would spell it out, that we wouldn't do it, but we all get so familiar with it,
We
we
do.
still do it.
We do.
But it has to be standalone, so when I get to the minutes.
I agree, I think putting in brackets is a great idea.
Yeah.
And I think it should be
I think that's a
here.
great idea.
Almost muscle memory at this point.
I don't even tell you that.
Right, go right up here at the top.
Yeah.
But the public doesn't have that memory,
Right.
so that's the important part. That's a great idea,
But
Paul.
it's even referred like that in the newspaper, too, so.
Yeah.
You just have to put it in the beginning on that parentheses, MRCOD.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the way they do it most times. They spell it out first, and then they only use the abbreviation in the subsequent use. We should follow that protocol, and that would solve the problem.
Yeah, because it does get wordy.
It does.
Yes, residential commercial.
Sounds like you're fishing.
So, Charlotte, I think John may have had a question.
Oh, excuse me, John.
So there's two items here that I have concerns about. One is going from 40,000 square feet to an actual acre is going to require about 10% more land to accomplish the 20 units. So I feel if you're going to do that, you should maybe go to 22 acres, 22 units per acre. Shouldn't make this less. We're trying to make this more acceptable to developers and to our community. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I'm really concerned about making a special permit, because that was a very important part in the very beginning, that if it's by right, it doesn't get appealed and spend 2 or 3 years in court, and it could just make it very difficult for someone to develop their property, a lot more difficult. So, I don't use Mr. Galasso as an example, but there was seemed to be a lot of contentious neighbors concerned about what he was proposing to do, yet it was an existing structure, vacant, an eyesore. There was a lot of pluses to what he was trying to do, and if it had been a special permit, he might be in court for the next 3 years.
Still be there.
So I really have concerns about those two items.
Yeah.
Where does special permit come in? Is it, it's not a special permit except for some condition? Or is it now always
Right now, it's by right.
By right?
By
It
right
still
in
is.
fixed areas. It's not by right everywhere.
Only in the Mr. Cod areas.
Right,
In the district.
Yeah.
in the ones that we already
I wouldn't
chose.
want to change that, but
So where's the special permit come in? What triggers a special permit? that
So-
John's concerned about?
Well, it would technically be triggered with this amendment.
That everything would be a special
Any
permit?
application through the Mr. Cod, mixed residential and commercial overlay district.
Why do we want to do that?
Well, that doesn't sound like a good idea.
Well,
Go over that again. I don't see what's the benefit.
right.
Missed that.
So it's, one, the consistency thing, I think it's a minor thing. But I think really importantly is the ability for the planning board to have discretion over these potential applications, and the ability to say no to something that you don't feel is consistent with the neighborhood or may have a detrimental effect. Currently, a by right use is very challenging to have that process be denied. Essentially, our understanding is that you really can't deny a site plan review, provided that it's following the rules that you have outlined in the bylaw.
But if
So you
one of the
don't have
rules
that
deals
discretion.
with something subjective, like the character of the neighborhood, most of the rules are cut and dried. And I can see your point, but not all of the rules. And there's enough subjectivity in them that enables that discretion. So that when we say, well, no, we're just not going to approve that the way it is.
Sorry, through site plan review?
Yes,
So, and I think that's the part that I would caution you on, is that you're not really allowed to deny a site plan review. The review is of the site plan itself and whether or not it complies with the zoning bylaw. If it complies, an applicant's entitled to an
so
approval by
supposing
the
part
planning
of the
board.
failure to comply is failure to comply with conforming to the character of the area.
Well, again, it's not just that component, but within your special permit section of the bylaw, there are certain criteria that you have to, as a board, determine that there aren't impacts to, or that the application fits within or is consistent with those criteria.
I don't think character of the area is part of site plan review, is it?
Yes, it is. That's a design review. That's a design element.
But it's,
Because that
Subjective.
site plan review includes the design review.
site plan review is challenging, because as you know, it's not a statutorial thing. And so every community sort of creates their own site plan review, guidelines, rules, regulations. It's simply, and I'll say it again, it's really important, in my opinion, that the planning board has the ability to push back on an applicant provided that they're not meeting the criteria of the special permit process.
Can you find another way we can do it without making the special permit? Because when we passed this bylaw, we were avoiding the special permit for a reason. That was a specific charge that we tried to do. That was the meat of it, actually.
Yeah.
This would be gutting it.
Can I say something?
Yes, John?
It appears to me that if government imposes too many restrictions or onerous restrictions, people find a way around it. So, the example, Jim brought up the idea, the thought that we had an applicant tonight, 9,000 something square feet, 10,000 square feet, they have to go to the Cape Cod Commission. We had two structures tonight. So Cape Cod Commission, we had an applicant recently that kind of complained about some things. $20,000 filing fee, 4 to 6 months in front of the Cape Cod Commission.
Right.
Then you have to make retribution for open space. If you can't do that, you have to pay a price. In this case, it was 4,500 square feet. The applicant had to pay $11,000. So the government can make it onerous, but people find their way around it. So we have approximately 450 apartments being built in the town of Falmouth. Did any of them get approved by the planning board, or no, they went to 40B? I mean, people are going to find a way around these things, and
I think they still will.
And we have Mr. Cod in a district. We want to have some say in what's going to happen here.
And it doesn't have to be ironclad.
I just feel it's really important that we're trying to make something happen in certain districts, and we're going to have a say on it. But if someone's going to get tied up in 2 or 3 years in court, they'll go a different route. There are different routes they can take.
Well, they'll go 40B right away.
40B, a lot of people don't like our bylaw. They want to go 40B because they think it's too onerous already. They don't like the 20 units per acre. They don't like some of the other restrictions we put in there. Isn't that, part of the problem with the plaza, that they're
That's the Kimco problem.
Kimco's.
So what we've done is we tried to address those, concerns as it relates to dimensional items. So again, taking out the special permit conversation, but we've allowed some flexibility on the setbacks. We've allowed some flexibility on the lot coverage. We've allowed flexibility on the building height. So we're trying to address some of the input that we've received from the development community about the rules applied here, none of which had anything to do with the special permit versus site plan review. None of that came up.
But this is adding a whole new wrinkle, and there are at least 3 of us who really have questions about that. But there's another thing that you're planning to add here that would really kick Kimco out completely, saying they can't have residential on the first floor. I mean, this is the first time we've seen any rules about what's allowed on which floor.
That doesn't say.
And this is an important distinction. So in a mixed-use development project, traditionally what you have is commercial on the first floor and residential above. That's what's written into here, and it's just articulated much clearer than it was before. You can still do complete residential buildings,
Where
absolutely.
does it say that?
It's included within, hold on.
Because what I'm seeing here is, use is allowed, use is not permitted on the ground floor.
Yep.
Not permitted. And what use, it just,
So if you go up to
it
240.
doesn't say residential, under uses allowed, active uses, ground floor.
So up at 247.5E, use regulations, principal structures. That clause says the following regulations shall govern the uses allowed in a mixed-use development. It's not a multifamily development, it's a mixed-use development. Then
I'm sorry, I didn't follow your reference. Where am I supposed to be?
247.5E. So all of that language only relates to a mixed-use development, where you would have commercial and residential combined in the same building, or buildings.
And yet we were hoping that most of the Mr. Cod buildings, just to use the acronym because it's easier, would be mixed use.
Right.
And we didn't exclude any use from any floor. That I recall, we anticipated residential would go toward the upper floors, commercial would go to the lower floors.
Right.
But it didn't require that.
Yeah, so I guess what I
This is
tell
really
you
different.
is that as a practitioner, right, using this bylaw and speaking to the development community, there was a lot of vagueness in the previous bylaw. Now, typically, vagueness can be beneficial, but vagueness is also detrimental when practitioners can't answer the question related to what can I do and how much can I do.
That's why they come to get a site plan review to get a yes or a no.
Right, but you also have a building commissioner who has to enforce the zoning. And so the more information we can provide to an applicant and to the building commissioner as to what's allowed and what's not.
Doesn't the building commissioner take approval by the planning board as his marching orders? He now is not going to forbid something that's been approved. Am I misunderstanding something?
It's not, I think you're just we're conflating the two things together. The building commissioner also needs to interpret the zoning bylaw. That's his primary role, is to interpret the zoning bylaw. And when the bylaw is confusing and vague, it makes it very difficult to interpret it.
But the plans that have been filed make it really
Nothing to do
concrete.
with the plans. It's got nothing to do with the plans. It's just the bylaw itself. And as your town planner, I also found it difficult to interpret the Mr. Cod bylaw. So it was challenging for me to understand. In fact, we had differences of opinions on multiple conversations about what the language actually meant. And we witnessed it with an application that came before us. So all we're trying to do is just provide as much clarity as possible so that there aren't those vague
So are we
points.
saying that you cannot have residential on the first floor?
No, you absolutely
Can.
can. Yep.
Yeah.
As in,
Not if you're having mixed use.
in a multi-family
So it'd be-
development project.
But does that fall into Mr. Cod?
Absolutely,
Yes.
yes. Yep.
So,
It can also go the other way, Jim.
I think, right, but so if they wanted to have a small store or something on the ground floor, then would that make it mixed use?
Correct.
But that's allowable too.
Yes, yes.
So,
Just like it was before, we've just added.
so we really
some
don't have a
vague-
problem then.
No, you
Well,
don't.
then why is this
I think I don't
section?
hear a problem. So if they really wanted to go, like this, there's the ones across from Betsy's, they're putting their laundry on the first floor, but the rest of the first floor is residential.
Yep,
Is that correct? So they're just having a small portion of it.
correct.
And I think that's what I thought of when we were doing this, they would have a little. But if they don't want to have any, I don't think we should stop them from doing, because we
They
need
don't
the
have-
housing. So
Yeah,
it
they
sounds
can
like
do
it's
all
okay.
housing, yeah.
So what are we arguing about here?
Now, it's an important distinction, and it's an important point here, too, is that currently, in a mixed-use development, so the Paul's Automotive application that you just referenced, with this new bylaw, they would not be allowed to put commercial and housing on the first floor. So if
You were that
that's
clear.
where you're getting at, we can certainly amend that.
Couldn't you
allow
add
for
that to
housing as
uses
well.
allowed?
Because I think that's what, I know what I envisioned it. We talked about, yeah, we'd have to do it, they could have a little store if they needed it, and make neighborhoods, you know, that people could walk, they wouldn't have to go, walk miles, and then if we have all the people in the building, they could get something they need right there if they wanted it. And I thought that was good for neighborhoods, and that's what I thought we were doing.
That is what we thought we were doing. So I wish these pages were numbered, but I think it's the third page of what you sent us.
It is.
And it's 240-7.5E, 1, ground floor, uses allowed on the ground floor, active uses. If that list included residential, I would not have a problem.
Okay?
Good? What do you guys say?
The only problem I have with making everything residential is we're taking commercial property and making it residential. And I hate to lose commercial property just for
No,
residents only.
we're giving more options. We're giving a mixed option to the developer of that building. And we ought to get to how many units and so forth, but we're trying to give as many options and possibilities as possible. I guess what I'm picturing, when I say that, is the way cities used to be. The South End in Boston, where I lived for some 30 years. There were mostly townhouses, But the way things had happened over time, many of the townhouses had dentist offices in them, they had little convenience stores in them, they had this and that, but they still had, right next to them, apartments on the same floor. And why not?
We can add that.
Sure. Yep. So you could have, say, a barber shop. If you have a large facade, you have a barber shop on one side and you have an apartment right next to it if you really wanted to.
Right, and if the
Or-
developer thinks that won't work, they don't have to build
They
it
don't have
that
to do
way.
it. Yeah, they have to want to do it. They have to think that they're going to make more money if they do it that way, or they won't.
Or the residential behind the barber shop,
Yeah.
right? Say it's a
Right.
long building. Yeah. No issue there.
Okay,
What do you think?
I still think we want businesses along Main Street and not just all apartment buildings.
That didn't change from before, though. Wasn't that allowed before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's not a change.
We've just articulated more clearly what those uses can be within the building.
I think at some point, we have to have a little faith that the market declares what retail businesses are, because it's relationship to the street and windows and people coming and going, and then the further back in the building doesn't need to be. And it's not even considered retail, I mean, retail space is really the
I
first.
guess what's in the back
little
of my
bit-
mind, what is it, Industrial A that allowed housing?
Yeah,
And we lost all our Industrial A to housing.
housing, right.
And we've been complaining about, oh, we got no industrial land because it all went to housing, you know, Industrial A. And that's where I'm coming from
that's a real
with this.
concern.
I should also mention, and I apologize for not mentioning it at the beginning, a lot of the information that's included in this amendment is taken directly from the Cape Cod Commission's model mixed-use bylaw. So a lot of this information is something that they have already recommended that other communities consider. And one of those things is limit commercial, but limit the first floor to only commercial, and do your traditional commercial on the first floor and residential above.
You know, that would make sense, except
I don't
we have a
understand
really
how-
big piece of land, and the business side of it really is just the first 20 feet or 30 feet. And the building's 100 feet long. Retail space, 200 feet back in the building doesn't make any economic sense.
And you can have that conversation with an applicant when they, come before you for a proposal. You could say, hey, have you considered more commercial space on that first floor? And they can have a conversation, a dialogue with you about, no, we have considered it, but we just don't want to go there. Or maybe you can encourage them to add more residential. But the point is, you can have that dialogue with them during the special permit process, if you want to do a special.
Okay,
And
but you're
that's why I
thinking-
like the Paul's Auto, because it did have.
Yeah, I like-
And it did also have residences behind it. You know, I'm fine with that.
Right, but when that came before us, they did have the option to do all residential
Right.
as well. So that part of it isn't changing. It's,
But this, when you go clothes shopping, you try it on before you buy it. And it's hard without, I do anyway, and you try it on here. We have the Kimco application to help us think this through. So I'm looking at this, trying to think, well, gee, could we do Kimco with this and get it? Because now they're pushed toward 40B in order to get what they want to get. Because what they want is higher, and you say that's changed the dimensional, and we haven't focused on that yet. And the other thing they needed was a lot more units. A lot more units. But this is sticking to the 20 per 40,000 if we go with the 40,000 feet or somewhere in there. What was your thinking on that?
Well, again, just to be consistent. Really, it's just about being consistent in terms of the maximum allowed density, units per acre. But again, if you want to keep the 20 units per 40,000 of upland, that's
Well,
fine too.
That's, it's been labeled a hobgoblin by other people.
I was confused because I always thought an acre was more than 40,000, and then I was told.
44.
It is.
Then I was told.
4, 3, 5, 6,
Well,
7.
that's a city acre, the 40,000 that we've used. I wasn't gonna
Builder's
argue.
acre is what they call it too. yeah.
Builder's acre, okay.
But that's our zoning too. We have used the 40,000. And-
Right, it's a zoning acre.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to revert back to 40,000 of upland, that's fine too. There's no issue there at all. It just was trying to be consistent.
Okay, but my issue is about the number of allowed units per whatever acre, or 44,000 or whatever.
So you're thinking potentially increase that?
I think it would be problematic to go to town meeting and change that. I think the easiest way to do it is don't
muck with it.
Yeah.
leave it
I don't
alone.
think we haven't had an application that's been an
No,
issue.
but if we were saying we're changing it from 20 to 22, we're gonna get a lot more fights, as opposed to just letting it go at 40,000 square feet for a depth, and say that, well, that's what we meant. That'll kind of slide through a lot easier, in my opinion.
I think so. I also, from my perspective, I like the listing of the uses, because we always get an argument. And I think the listing of uses, if it comes before us and we find others, if you do it by a special permit, you can do it. You let them have it. You know, the potential ones. If not, if we don't do it by special permit, aren't the applicants limited to the listed ones?
They would be limited in both circumstances, because the special permit that special permit doesn't give you the ability to alter what's allowed in the
Okay.
building. It gives you the ability, well, the special permit in general, right, is it just a different criteria that you would need to decide on. But there are, I guess, relief valves, if you will, in terms of the dimensional requirements, if you're getting at that. But no, the uses would be specified here.
Okay.
And I think it's worth stating, the prior definition said without limitation. Remember that term, without limitation? So essentially, some people interpreted that to say, well, it mentions that we can have office space and commercial and institutional, but it also says without limitation. So does that mean I can have a use that's not listed here? Or does that mean without limitation on the amount of that space? Again, interesting question, and we tossed that around for a while, and we had people on both sides of it arguing their case. So it's unclear. And that's, what we look for from a practitioner's perspective is clarity. Because it really is challenging when someone asks a question, well, can I do this? And we say, well, not sure, because I'm not sure what that sentence means. And then we spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. So the clearer the better, in my opinion.
Could we keep going through it?
Sure.
Can I get into the weeds on a little bit? It'd be page 5.
Sure.
Okay, under number 1, minimum lot size.
Yep.
You started out, I can't, because I crossed it out so firmly, it should be the minimum lot size.
Sure.
Okay. And then you go down under setbacks, and after residential property, it should be a semicolon.
Okay.
So I'm out of the weeds now.
Cool. I do want to just hit upon like the setback issue. We've heard from, or at least I've heard from the development community that they had issue with the requirement to be 20 feet from the side or the front yard setback. And so what we've done is we've changed the phrasing to say no more than 25 feet, which is your typical setback.
Look at
Yeah.
that.
So the applicant has the ability to go closer to the street if they want, or they can come back to 25 feet. So there's some flexibility on where that can
Residential
land.
here.
Okay, what that means.
And I think when we were discussing this too, we wanted to see not just a straight line across, we wanted to see
Variety.
variegation.
I didn't realize he was changing it to this level.
It's completely different. I have a question. Use
You're
is not,
limited to 2 questions. Sorry. That's it for you.
use is not permitted on the ground floor.
Yes.
Okay, I get the part about the cars and all.
Yep.
But then we get to any other use that is not open to the public, but we added residential to uses allowed. Didn't we?
You
Put
added it
residential on
to,
the ground floor.
yep.
So what was in your mind when you had, or what was in the Cape Cod Commission's mind, any other use that is not open to the public?
That is not allowed on the first floor. Is that,
Yeah, and if we put residential in, that's not open to the public. So now there's a conflict.
I think,
Yeah, so we would have to address that conflict if you want to do residential on the first floor.
you'd have to take it out.
Yeah, yeah, or reword it in a way that makes it clear on,
What are you trying to do?
again, that language was taken from the Cape Cod Commission, so we want to spend a little bit more time with that, just to get a firm handle on that, but
Do you have
essentially.
any idea at all what they thought they were doing?
Well, I think the intent is to essentially prohibit someone from entering the building for which they don't have the ability, right? I mean,
No. Use
Am I
is not
misunderstanding?
permitted. You're not permitted to have a use that's not open to the public.
All these others are open to the public, though, art galleries.
They are. These are all open to the public except residential
So,
that
okay,
we added.
so on number 3, you can say any other use that is not open to the public except
Except for
residential.
residential.
right, exactly. Just clear that up.
So you can't have like a utility room
Yep.
or a storage facility that's locked.
Trying to get my mittens.
Well, so,
I think it's problematic.
We got 6 of these to do tonight.
okay, I mean, that's fair. It's a fair statement, so we'll take another.
I mean, we can't really
Let's look
explain
at
it. To say they thought it up, we'll ask them, is kind of picturing standing in front of town meeting trying to explain that.
Sure.
I think it's tricky. I'd just get rid of it.
I have another question, and this is under 240-7.5J,
Okay.
and under 2. It says, "All housing units made available for rent must be rented on terms of not less than 12 months." And we don't have anything to do with subletting. I think maybe that should be prohibited. If you've got a rental, it has to be for 12 months. And somebody might rent it and then sublet it. So I don't know whether we want to allow that or not.
I mean, well, I guess then the question becomes, if someone sublets their apartment for a period of 12 months, is that an issue?
I don't know. I just thought about it when I was reading it.
Yeah,
To me, it doesn't matter.
yeah. Because ultimately, you're providing rental housing for a period of 12 months and not under, so it wouldn't be considered a short-term situation.
I don't think under residential, you're even allowed to lease it for more than a year. I don't think you can have more than a year's lease. I think it has to be.
Really?
I think we should check into it. It was pointed out to me, I did a 5-year lease, and I was told about 3 years into it, you're not allowed to do that, Jim.
Wow.
Did they show you that in print?
No, my attorney, Paul Glenn, mentioned it to me, and I didn't even bother looking it up. I just took what he said. So check into that. I don't know if that matters, but
Yeah.
what do we care if somebody has it and they want to? What if they move away
That was.
and they only
another
have,
thing.
they got 10 more months to leave? They leave it
Right.
vacant?
No, you don't want to. But it didn't mention anything, and so that it occurred in my brain as I was going over this.
The other thing,
and
how are we even going to know?
We wouldn't.
I know.
So in theory, I mean, you could rent the apartment, right? And then decide, or maybe you get a new job somewhere and you have to relocate. You can sublet to someone else for that year period.
Or the 10 months.
Or you can
What
talk
have
to your
you.
landlord and break the lease and he rents it to somebody
I
else.
suppose you could do that too.
Landlord could say no.
Yeah, and then you deal with it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what goes on now.
That's a big hit.
I don't know if that's in our purview.
I don't know.
John, what would you do?
I think that it wouldn't be up to us anyway.
Yeah.
Right,
That the people are gonna do what they're
Yeah.
gonna do.
right.
It seems to me, I'm not sure I remember this right, when Kimco finally came in with a thought of a plan,
Yeah.
it came out to a lot more than 20 units per acre, remember?
Yes, there was some back and forth on that. Yeah.
It was a lot. And if we're trying to make it possible for developers to choose the local option, at least in that example, they wouldn't choose it.
Well, again, remember, we've provided some flexibility in the dimensional items, which has always been what we've received as input, the restrictions that are in place, right? So you had to have the building up at 20 feet from the front setback. Maximum lot coverage was capped at 70%, and you couldn't vary from that at all. And then building height was capped at 35 feet.
Right.
So there wasn't any wiggle room. And so what we've done is we've tried to add some wiggle room under a special permit criteria that would allow the board to essentially provide that flexibility.
Which is great. That's the flexibility they were looking for. But they also wanted to have more, I'm just going page by page.
Yeah.
And they also wanted to have more units. So they would have gotten to page 3 and 4 and said, oh, that's it, I'm over.
No, that wasn't a sticking point, but I also, I'm not sure if we can discuss this, can we?
We really shouldn't, but I love that ringtone. Why would you silence that?
The guy in Africa, rah!
Yeah, we were just getting to the good part.
If you're looking it up, it's the hunting horn.
Fantastic.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we should really try to stay clear of, potential applicants and, what their issues are. But our understanding was that dimensional issues were the dimensional requirements were the issues at play for that particular site.
You don't remember the number of apartments?
I remember the dimensionals being the most serious one.
Yeah.
Everybody wants more density.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're gonna, I thought we pushed pretty hard to get from 8 to 20. I thought was a really big step.
Right.
It is. Now, what did Saxon get?
Well, they, 350 or
300,
300.
but not per acre. So I don't know what theirs worked out as on a per acre basis or per 40.
I do think it's important to also understand the current environment. So as you know, we've reached our 10%. The town now has more control over these 40Bs. That isn't to say that there's going to be a blanket denial of all of them, but the town is in a much better position to, I guess, push back on some of the issues that they are most concerned about. So it's entirely possible that you start to see applicants start to look at the Mr. Cod district and say, this might be a better option for me, because there's some flexibility baked into this bylaw that may not exist in the 40B process anymore.
That's a good point.
Jed, is there any other way that we could get some teeth in it without going to a special permit?
Not that I can see, no. And that's my concern, is that ultimately you may be in a position where you're forced to say yes to too many of these, and you may be significantly changing the character of the Mr. Cod district. And so this would give you, and I called it up on my screen, so I'm just going to go through the criteria. Adequacy of the site in terms of its size and proposed use, suitability of the site for the proposed use, impact on traffic flow and safety, impact on neighborhood visual character, including views and vistas, adequacy of method of sewage disposal, source of water and drainage, adequacy of utilities and other public services, the effect of the proposed project on the adequacy of the supply of affordable housing in town. Those are some of the decision criteria in which you'll have to apply if you change this to a special permit, right, to a special permit process. And I think it's wise to do so.
I'm going to put my oar in the water on that, too. I will agree with you on that. I think,
Well, I can tell you, if I was told we're gonna switch to this special permit, I never would have agreed to Mr. Cod. I would have stayed with form-based code. And I thought we were doing this to make it easier. And John really convinced me that we would.
Well, there aren't that very many large parcels.
There isn't. And
Not like we're talking about 1,000 apartments or something.
to be honest with you, I think the market's gonna tell us a lot of things. That some of these places, they're gonna want stores on the ground floor. It's just common sense. It's with the traffic in front.
You can do
So,
that.
And having, the problem is these really big sites, you're controlling the back of the site with the same rules as the front, and it really doesn't work that way market-wise.
not in this one, you're not.
Not in this one. Building height is quite different.
No. No, I'm just saying the use.
Yeah, what's allowed. But I think you fixed that.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
fixed it by allowing the both.
You're saying we have to have, make your argument again, why it has to be a special permit. So Mr. Cod would now be a special permit.
Correct.
More control, that's it.
Yeah.
I would.
It's through the
that was
planning,
One of the reasons why I worked on the Mr. Cod group for a couple of years, because it didn't have a special permit. That was the underlying thing, my whole reason for wanting to do it.
Well, this is open for discussion, Jim, it's not, they're not saying we have to do it, this is for discussion.
I know, I'm just just come to the realization that we're backtracking on.
But we didn't. There are enough of us who agree with you and
Okay.
John that it should be by right, that it's likely not going to go by special permit.
It's entirely up to the board, right? It's your zoning bylaw that you'll, ultimately bring to town
Well,
meeting. So if you feel strongly that you don't want it,
If in fact we got one that we didn't like, we could come back and make it a special permit if we could admit, not
No.
for future ones.
no.
We couldn't change the bylaw again?
Oh, yeah, but why would you do
Just
that?
because we said it was a mistake, it didn't work.
But we've already changed it once. You don't want to keep changing it.
Now, let's try to get it right this
Okay,
time.
I'm just trying to find a way out from not having to do as a special permit.
Sometimes
I
I
think
think you
it's a-
gotta worry about what you wish for, because I look at my hometown and how no regulations has totally ruined that town. It was a square mile island, north shore of Boston, and it is nothing like it used to be.
Uh-huh.
No, Winthrop.
Oh, Winthrop's a
Yeah.
mess.
Oh, it's a mess. They've totally ruined it.
That's the little
There's
way.
gridlock getting in, getting out. I mean, it's, I have, the kid in the house I grew up in, one of the kids that grew upstairs kept that house forever, and he finally had to sell it and get out of Winthrop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So which way are you coming down on this, Bob?
I worry about when you just let, no control and no regulation. I worry about that, because people take advantage of that. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in other towns, in other states, where, this is a very delicate area that we're dealing with here. I mean, we are a tourist area still, and if we turn it into Burlington, that's going to affect us here. We're also, I always worry about the water, both potable water and our wastewater system. The state isn't going to help us out with the wastewater. That's pretty obvious. They're telling everybody on the Cape they got to redo their own septic systems, and they're not going to sewer the place, help us with that. So I worry about overdevelopment of the Cape. I don't want to turn this into Hyannis either. I mean, it's a very special place,
Mr. Cod's all in the sewer.
yeah, but,
That
Thanks for
doesn't mean we
showing
can
that up.
add to it.
yeah,
Sewer's at max right now, too.
yeah.
The sewer just means it goes by a pipe to West Falmouth, and I'm not sure that's a great thing.
currently.
I mean, I
Like
look
to go
at
in the
the
pipe to the-
accessory apartment bylaw, where we did have some control on how things looked and where they were positioned and all that. I think that's good. I think it helps maintain the character of the,
Well, why can't we have those, but we didn't do it by special permit, we did it by right. That's my exact
But wait a
point.
minute. Where did we lose you then in this? Right now, bringing it back to this?
with taking out the special permit by the
Oh.
planning board. Mr. Cod by right.
There's 152 apartments being built on Main Street right now,
Yeah, I know.
under
Well,
40B.
like what Jed said before, though, we're at our 10%, so not everyone is just gonna be like, oh, Mr. Cod doesn't work for me, I'm gonna go
We're
apply
at
for
our
a 40B.
10% now, that doesn't mean we're gonna stay there.
Yeah.
It's fair.
Well, project it out,
It's always in flux.
I know.
but it's not just 10%, it's 85 or 90 units a year? What's the
No.
housing production plan also gives us relief from that?
Technically, but once you hit your 10%, that's your statutory safe harbor. So that's,
So,
I hate to use the word permanent, but it's the
So-
more permanent of the two.
But, John, just carry through your thought, based on what you said, therefore, you want it to be a special permit?
I do not.
You do not. So therefore, you're sticking with by right.
I would prefer by right. Again, there
you're
aren't that
sticking
many
with by
parcels
right.
where this is gonna get used.
yeah.
Okay.
There aren't,
Just,
what,
we
4 or
just
5
need to.
parcels? of any size. It's not like it's gonna have 1,000 apartments built.
Right.
Well, that's why I was asking Bob which side he's coming down on.
He's not sure.
He's not for it, he's for special
And
permit. So
yeah.
where are you?
Right, special permit, that's what I said.
Oh, I
Okay.
didn't hear you say it. Paul, where are you on that question?
I think now that we reach safe harbor, I think it gives the planning board some of the authority it used to have. And I think that's where we be able to step up, because in the past, when they claimed 40B, it just bypassed the planning board. So I think a lot of that's going to now come back to us again where it should come.
So do you think that this should be by right, or we should move to a special permit? Mr. Cod right now is by right.
By right.
Do you want to keep it by right or move to special
I
permit?
think it should be by right, if it's defined.
1, 2, 3, 4. Tonight. The other thing I think
I mean, it's
is,
still going before your committee, your working group.
right,
So
because
keep working on it.
is this, I've recovered from my shock, but not completely. So I think that we really are going to take these home and
Yes.
Read them
and
again.
absorb it.
Yep.
And see, because as I've tried to read through for the remaining pages, I don't bump against anything that hit me the way the first couple of things did, but they might.
Well, I'm also blanking on this too, when do we have to have it in its final form for the warrant?
End of the week.
Yeah,
what I
so
thought.
the language has to technically be into the select board's office. The warrant closes on Friday. So we will be prepared to submit that, but the select board doesn't finalize the warrant until the 9th of September. So you've got a little bit of time to, tweak the language.
Okay, but the by right question, special permit by right, is a much bigger thing than a tweak. So I would think by the end of the week, whatever we're handing over to them ought to reflect the big questions answered, not something we're suddenly going to pull the rug on.
Yeah. And
And yet, none of us, I think, feel ready to just say, great, go with it. Do we?
I was just gonna say,
I'm sorry, I didn't even realize this special permit was coming back in. I'd never envisioned we would, I thought the whole reason why we did, Mr. Cod, so it wouldn't be a special permit, so. That's like 180 degrees from where I was sitting.
Well, the working group actually did discuss Mr. Cod, so we thought we were going to be looking at something familiar, but we're not.
so it sounds like you would prefer site plan review. That's what I'm getting from the group.
Yeah, you know what, too, and I want to challenge you a little bit. I have done some reading about the enforcement of site plan review, and I disagree with some of the statements that not only you have made, but your predecessors have made about what we can and cannot do. I think I would like to take a really hard look at what all the teeth that is in site plan review and make sure we all understand it, because I didn't write down the specifics, but when I was reading about it, I said, wait a minute, site plan review has some teeth in it.
It definitely has teeth, yes, yes. There's definitely teeth. I don't think they're sharp, but I think there's teeth.
So maybe we should talk,
Yeah, sharpen up site plan.
yeah,
Yeah,
give the tools necessary
Yeah.
without giving it away.
right. And that was actually one of the items that the Bobs, our consultants, had identified through the recodification process, that site plan review needs some work.
I'm gonna pull out and read site plan, the details from site plan review, because I recall some specifics in there that we haven't done in the past, that I actually thought it did have significant teeth in it, that we could hold it up, and that it is our role as planners to do that. I should have written it down and saved it, but I think a very strong site plan review is the way I would like to do this.
Yeah, I'd
And
be
not
willing to
special
go by
permit.
right if we had more teeth in the
Yeah,
site plan.
that's what I thought we were doing.
That would work for me.
All right, so I'm hearing you prefer site plan review. We can certainly change the bylaw
Strong
to
site
reflect
plan
that.
review, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say strong site plan review and
My
weak
point-
site plan review.
My point is, we've all been cajoled, site plan review doesn't do any much, but when I read a couple of weeks ago on all the teeth that is in site plan review, and it is all right, I thought it would sound a lot stronger than we all consider it to be. And I think maybe we should look at everything that is in site plan review, and maybe our compromise solution lies in that fact. I don't know. I have to do some homework.
Okay.
Looks like the affordability requirements stayed pretty much the same.
Yes, they did. Yep.
Right. So that's the same.
Yep.
And on procedures, these look pretty much the same.
Yep. So we did add in.
What's this variance thing?
Right, so it's an important point. So we did add in a variance allowance. So the board, through this process, can grant a variance for certain dimensional requirements, right? So if an applicant
I like this part.
requests a variance, you can consider it as part of this new.
It's only with
This new
special
amendment.
permit though, right?
But we're not giving away, we have to agree.
Correct, correct. And obviously, the applicant would have to demonstrate why they want it, right, and go through that process. But keep in mind, it is tied to 48, Section 10. So there are specific reasons for why you would grant a variance. Variance is very difficult to achieve. It deals with topography, soil conditions, the shape of the lot. So there's certain circumstances that create a hardship, and that applicant needs to demonstrate what those are in order to get the variance that they're asking.
It can't be a self-imposed hardship.
How are we gonna work this out so that what goes to the select board on Friday is something that we're content with?
Well, so again,
Can we come to your office at some point at the end of the week and look at it?
yes, absolutely. Yep. And obviously, we'll be discussing it at the working group on Thursday. And then what we can do is change the language to site plan review and then discuss it at the working group level. And, you know, we can have a final version for Friday, absolutely.
And at that meeting, town council will be there too, so you can ask those questions about special permit versus site plan review and why they also agree that special
The
permit.
working group meeting?
Yep,
Right, but what about the whole board having an opportunity to see it on or before Friday?
We can email it to you. Yep.
When does the working group meet?
it's a Zoom,
It's Thursday.
Thursday at 11.
Thursday 11.
So they have to get out Thursday night. Like, you have to get to us Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, it's not a problem to amend the bylaw itself, because really, there's just a small section that articulates the special permit, so that shouldn't be an issue. But, you know, I'm working on these all hours of the evening.
He doesn't sleep.
Well, we'll put you in for a raise.
I put myself in for a raise, too.
We would second that.
You know, nobody was on the other
I'm
end of that
sorry, I
line.
totally missed how important this discussion was. I didn't think we'd be talking about anything like this. In a discussion, I thought, oh, that'd just be something we talk about quickly.
Well, I think we got through it. We've got some more to take a look at. Other
I wasn't
articles.
prepared, I'm sorry. I read everything else except for,
We didn't
the
have this
discussion.
until today.
Maybe that's why I didn't read it.
That's right.
So very quickly, do you want me to go through accessory apartments? That's the next one?
Yes, let's.
Okay, so accessory
One
apartment,
thing on that. Bill Newbound had some very interesting comments to make at the meeting a couple of weeks ago.
Do you have your copies of all this?
And I don't know if any of that is appropriate to add to this
You want
document.
to share?
we would add that to our site plan review
Paying
amendments
attention this time.
Okay.
when we
Oh.
make those.
But look, this is accessory apartments.
I think I'm familiar with it, everything we're doing in accessory
I
apartment.
have an
We've
extra
already talked
packet.
about it,
Yeah, we
right?
have.
Have we talked about these before?
Very briefly at the last meeting, I went through some of the changes for everybody on accessory apartments.
All right.
Where's that?
So
It's to
what-
keep in line with the state, with what was just passed
Right.
with the state.
So-
Yeah, I mean, well, we have no choice, right? February, we have to do it.
First one you
Yeah.
back over is this.
So the one thing I think is really important for the board to understand is that, to Melinda's point, it all is compliant with the new legislation that was just recently passed. However, there is a section in here that allows for an applicant to apply for more than one accessory apartment, and that would be on the same lot. That would be through a special permit process. And that is written into the legislation.
That's, yeah.
So I want to make
So
that
the
clear.
state's saying they can do more than one, but it has to be a special permit.
Correct.
Oh, I missed that.
And it has to conform to, you know.
Everything else.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what the state didn't articulate is what is more than one.
Thank you.
So, unknown at this time, and
So, but general residential, all our other things, that all goes out by the boards too. All these, this is it's in all zones.
it's in all zones. Well, it's in
All
all.
residential.
All
zones.
residential
residential
zones, if it has an R in it, it's,
Yep, yep. So now GR previously was no accessory apartments, it now allows for accessory apartments.
And they can have up to 2 accessory apartments.
No, they can have more than one
Yeah.
if they so choose through a special
It
permit.
doesn't say, it doesn't put a cap on how many you can have,
Solution.
but it doesn't say you can have,
I have another issue, this is a solution for another issue, that I'm having a nightmare with the bylaw about 3 units in general residential. I'm meeting with the town manager, my whole life has been turned upside down by the town illegally changed the bylaw, and my deed says it has to be accessory apartment. The
Yeah.
town doesn't have a right to change my deed, but they did. And I'm in a real, but the solution is to make it an accessory apartment, it might be the solution.
Right.
It can't be, with that ownership, I don't know.
Yeah, you,
I'm meeting with the town manager on Thursday.
Yeah.
Let's keep going on these.
I'm sorry,
can't get into that right now.
yep.
I'm sorry for your problem.
it's not part of this issue. I'm sorry to bring it up.
That's okay. So we know it's by right now. We know that we have to remove the owner occupancy requirement. The interpretation from town council was also to remove the requirement that not both units can be rented at the same time. Right, so we have to remove that language as well. We had that in there before.
So this was proposed for town meeting?
Yes, it is. Yep,
Oh, okay.
yep.
But these changes are mandated February anyway, right?
Yes.
There's nothing new that isn't mandated by the state in February, correct?
Not that we're aware of.
No, we haven't changed anything except for what
But
they,
what you had to,
yes.
okay.
And town meeting really has no choice.
They
but
have
to
no
pass it.
choice, yeah.
So,
We can do that, yeah. So so Melinda's asking about the short-term rental clause or the summer rental
Yeah.
clause,
Number 4.
number 4 and 9.1C. So that can remain. So you can still have control over an accessory apartment and its rental period, so as not to allow short-term rentals. You still have the ability to do that.
Should it be 12 instead of 6?
Should be not less than 6 months. So you can have a 6.5-month rental, and it's not a short-term rental,
Okay,
or not a summer rental.
okay, I got you.
Just a question. Who's going to enforce all this?
I believe they put your name in the hat.
Is it a paid position?
Unpaid,
Volunteer, huh?
yeah, volunteer.
Well,
Thank you for.
seriously, I mean, we can have all the ideas we want, but is there an enforcement officer in the works?
Building
somewhere?
commissioner.
I'm
Your
sorry?
building commissioner is your zoning enforcement agent in town.
But we have an assistant what does that now, right?
You're right, yes, yeah.
Do we really?
Full-time?
Yeah, there's
Full-time or
two there,
part-time?
isn't there? 1.5, isn't Sari back helping in that position as well?
She is, yeah.
And there's a so like, there's 2 people doing it right now.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah. it's-
So there's a lot of changes to accessory
We have
apartments?
none for a couple of years, so that's,
But this doesn't seem to cover all of them. This seems very incomplete.
What do you mean? The chart or the table?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again,
Is there a second page to this?
no, so this is just, this article itself with the table only changes the use tables, which previously had the attached and detached. So in a detached situation, it was a special permit. In an attached situation, it was by right. So now that removes it all and just says accessory apartment
I'm gonna show it.
by right. Yeah, that'd be great. It's accessory apartment allowed as of right. Melinda, I'm just trying to think, do we have it?
How it is?
Okay, in which case, this explanation is inadequate?
Yes, I still haven't done the explanations.
Ah,
These,
Oh, okay.
the explanations and the recommendations are just, what do you call, just not complete yet.
You're gonna
It's
have
just
an
the
awful
article.
week.
It's been busy,
Yeah,
yeah.
because this is not self-explanatory.
so I forgive you for not bringing up my issue with Mill Road and the sidewalks. You've been busy on doing other things.
Did you see I lost more hair? I didn't know that was possible. I'm not sure, are you looking for the bylaws themselves? Oh.
I was
The
gonna
actual
look at
bylaw.
just the, so they can see what it looks like now.
Sure.
It's wrong, I gotta go down.
So ultimately, the question that just popped into my mind is an accessory apartment, and I'll have to read the legislation. Is it meant to be allowed by right in every zoning district, or just the zoning districts that we specify?
I'm not sure.
So this is what
Me
the
neither.
table looked like before, where it had detached and attached, these two lines right here. That's changing.
It's in the GR, that's gonna be a yes, right?
Correct.
Instead of an N.
And then same with, well, agricultural, I don't know if that's,
It was the same, yeah.
it's the same. Okay. So, here they are, yep. So these won't be there anymore.
So that's the story with accessory apartments. I can provide more detail if you'd like.
No, it just needs an explanation, but I think it needs the other changes. If we're gonna go to town meeting in November,
Yep.
rather than just waiting for it to drop on our heads in February, then it ought to be complete.
Yep.
So it would be about the occupation requirements changing, the other changes.
Yep, all that's done. So importantly, it's removed the owner occupancy requirement, it's all by right. We've increased the size of the allowable accessory apartment to 900 square feet, or 50% of the principal dwelling, is consistent with the law. We've clarified, which is an important component here, we've clarified the language in there that talked about the one bedroom per 10,000 square feet. Now, if you've used the bylaw in the past like we have, it said Water Resource Protection District and Coastal Pond Overlay District that you're restricted at that point. The following sentences dropped off Water Resource Protection District. It just didn't make the bylaw for some reason. And so there was always question about, does it still apply? We're not sure.
So
So
you
we
added it
fixed that.
back?
We added it back in. Larry. Parking requirements, only one space per accessory apartment. If you're near a transit line, bus stop, or bus station, no parking requirement is required.
But wasn't that just for the T?
No.
So the B bus would classify that, so Woods Hole Road?
I'm not sure. Yes, I would say fixed route transit, yes, but
Yeah.
not like Bonanza or Peter Pan.
No, the B bus.
The B bus, so,
The one that runs on the whole Cape
Yep.
from P-Town to Woods Hole.
yes, yep. So if you're along Woods Hole Road, you're within the half mile of that route.
Half mile it is?
Yeah.
That's where all the general residential properties are anyway.
You sure it wasn't just the T around Metro Boston?
Positive. Positive.
No
'Cause
parking.
Depot Ave, same situation. It's a bus station. So anyone who lives in that area and wants to do an accessory apartment, there's no parking requirement.
Winthrop,
Yeah.
right.
Let's see.
That's
That's pretty much it.
not in our control.
You know what? I'm looking at number 12 there. It says all
Enough to make it
required
anti-government.
parking. Why don't we change that all parking for
I wish I
accessory
was
apartment?
building accessory apartments or things this now with this bylaw than when I did.
Because required or
years
not,
ago. I
if
wouldn't
you
be in
choose
so
to
much
put
trouble.
parking on.
Okay, yeah.
It's a great niche for a builder.
You
Yeah.
like that, okay, then?
Yeah.
Without the
Small little
word
units.
required.
I'm just trying to find it quickly.
Yeah,
Under 12,
kind of what we need.
Well,
Yeah.
and
got
it's
it.
the fourth line down.
All required. Yep, got it.
It's gonna change the world.
It is,
Might not be required.
it is, it doubles, it at least doubles.
No, the density
Every park, two
Every
people
lot.
in every garage.
Because if you can't
Yep.
require parking, but this is ludicrous that you can.
I think we could
We
We
probably.
can require it if it's not in the,
Yeah, all along Woods Hole Road, you can't require parking.
Woods Hole Road, Route 28,
Yeah.
and how about 151?
Yep,
Has a bus route on it.
it does.
And what's the connecting, is Gifford Street? How does the bus get from 28 to, oh, because of the highway?
It does not go down Gifford, but it does come down or go up Palmer.
Palmer
And
Avenue.
it goes down to the, what do you call it?
Well, the next meeting has all these bus routes on paper for us, so.
So,
But let's continue with our hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get where we're going here. We're
we were way ahead, now we're in a deep
We're
hole.
not
How long
focusing.
have we been here?
So a little bit of focus.
Yep.
But there was somewhere in the new housing thing, making some special carve-out for, they didn't call them fragile districts, but I think it was designed for the Cape, and I've forgotten what they called us.
Oh, I think it was a seasonal community.
Right,
Is that what you're getting at?
yes. And didn't that lift some of these owners' things off of us?
Not that I'm aware of. It was pretty vague.
But it was intended to do that.
I'm not sure that there's
Our
actual
local representatives
rules.
inserted it in order to do that.
So the reading that I have of the Affordable Homes Act is that the seasonal community component had nothing to do with accessory apartments or anything like that. There's a way in which a community can designate itself as a seasonal community, provided it has X, Y, and Z. But I believe the X, Y, and Z are still yet to be determined, because in the law itself, it said something about a committee needing to be established and rules needing to be formulated. So the way I read it was not clear.
So I'm wondering if we should jump into making our changes before they've clarified that, considering that was intended to help places like the Cape.
Yeah. For the accessory apartments, you mean?
For every single little change we might be thinking of as a result of that act.
Yeah.
Just hang on, and see how that clears up.
Well, so as it relates to accessory apartments, I would recommend that you bring this forward to town meeting and get it done now, rather than wait for February to happen, and then we have to wait till April to make an amendment. So that gray area between February and April, I mean, essentially, it would revert to what the state has already described, but we've already done that now, so we're ready to go. I don't know why you would wait.
Well, because we don't really know all of the ramifications, that's why we would wait.
But again, I think that seasonal community thing is separate from what we're bringing forward or proposing for town meeting for accessory apartments. They're two individual things within the law. I did not read them to be connected, but you know what we can do?
Nor did Maura. She waited on it.
We can certainly ask on Thursday,
Yeah,
yeah,
Let's,
just to make sure.
yeah.
let's see.
Because our population triples. We go
Yeah.
from 30 to 90
That's what I've heard, and some people think higher.
and higher, so that sure sounds like seasonal to me.
Well, yeah, and if it's the ADU part that is doubling the density, that adds to the problem. So I would think that would be very impacted as a seasonal community.
But I think we need to have what the state is telling us we need to have. So when February rolls around and people are coming before us, we have something to work with, and then if we want to amend that, we
March,
can go in
April.
Springtown meeting.
And that's,
Just 2 months in there. Let's bring it up on Thursday.
But then we have to change the bylaw, then it has to go to the Attorney General for
Yeah.
approval.
This is, we're gonna need staff. This is gonna require, there's no way that this can be managed with our existing staff.
You'd be surprised what we can
The
do.
zoning enforcement, I mean, I don't mean you guys, I mean,
I'm just kidding.
I
I'm
know.
talking
I was
about the
totally
zoning
kidding.
enforcement.
But
They
that's-
can't even do what we already have.
But that's not our
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
unfortunately. You know, that's
Yeah.
not our purview right now to hire staff for that. The state is telling us we have to do this, so we have to implement it regardless of if we have the enforcement or not.
But we agree.
But yes,
It's-
exactly.
We better put a warning out that this is two, I think it's two more people.
Okay,
Okay.
but for right now, tonight,
That'll
our
get town meeting
issue,
going, is what I'm saying. They don't like to hire people.
what we need to do tonight is take a look at this article about home occupation
Yes.
and home-based services, because our group working, who did do this, and let's take a look and see if it's okay with you, so that this can go forward at town meeting. Which one do you want to do first, the short one?
So the short one, yeah, let's start there.
Yeah.
So the short one is just modifying the definition of what used to be home occupation. So currently, the bylaw is somewhat confusing, so let's back up a little bit. Currently, the bylaw allows for home occupation by right. It also allows for a home-based service business by special permit. The purpose of this article, not the short one, but the longer one, is to fix that and call it just a home-based business. And a home-based business that's allowed by right, and a home-based business that's allowed by special permit. In order to do all of that, we need to change the definition of what we have in the bylaw currently, because we've got home occupation and home-based service business in there. So we're deleting those two phrases and replacing it with home-based business.
So your explanation is to say, we're changing the definitions to get rid of confusing definitions
Mhm.
and simplify the whole thing. So then we get to,
Then why is it when you say inserting the following text as shown below, home-based service business?
Yeah.
Shouldn't it
That's a
just be
typo.
home-based business?
Yeah.
Typo.
Okay.
Nice catch.
Yep.
Eagle eye.
I'm really good at dust balls on the floor. It's the next page, it's the next one.
So the definition itself
Going.
is pretty straightforward, but it simplifies things, or it attempts to simplify the difference between what we have now, which is a home occupation and a home-based service business. And this home-based service business definition was just, in my opinion, a little bit unruly. It had a lot of, if you're a landscaper, you're a carpenter, or something like this. Essentially, all we've done is say, you want to have a home-based business, you can do so, and it's very simple. It's just a business that you have in your home that includes the following things. But if you want to go beyond that, you have to seek a special permit. And that's what this zoning article, the longer one, attempts to do. Right? So it makes it very clear that up front, the outward appearance, gross floor area, traffic and parking, and a number of employees, if you fit within those 4 parameters and you're not exceeding it, you can have a home-based business by right in Falmouth. And so as an example, the gross floor area, you can't go over 30% of your principal dwelling for that home-based business. Employees, I think, is another one. Right now, as a by right use, you can only have family residents who are employed in your home-based business. But if you want to have additional employees, you're then into the special permit, realm, and you need to seek a special permit, and all of the previous information or criteria that was included in the current bylaw still apply. We've just made some minor tweaks to the language and took out some of the things that were questionable on what it actually meant. And so some of that language is just, a trailer of a certain size. Essentially, what you're trying to do is just control what a special permit home-based business would look like and what people are allowed to keep on their site, where they're allowed to keep it on their site, so that they respect the character of the neighborhood. That's essentially what the bylaw does. So it's minor changes, but I do think it's important to create that clear division, by right, special permit.
It's gonna be a wild town meeting.
it is.
It's gonna be wild. We're having a hard time with it. Just think about the town meeting members trying to understand this.
Yeah, so part of, like I said, part of this discussion tonight is if you feel like you don't want to bring this many articles to town meeting, we need to hear that.
Yep.
And the reason for that is because we've got a backlog of zoning bylaw amendments that we need to make over the course of apparently 23 years here in town. So we've got a lot of work to do, but every year or twice a year, we're going to be bringing multiple bylaw amendments to town meetings. So we just need to figure out what's the right number so that we're not overwhelming things. Because don't forget, Article 10 is also ready to go.
And it's a bear.
It's a big one.
The-
I have a quick question.
This one isn't so much. It's really just saying that you can have your home-based business as long as it doesn't really show. But if it's gonna show, because you've got a lot of vehicles there, you've got a lot of people coming and going, you're doing a lot of storage there, you need a special permit. Come and explain it to the ZBA. That's what this says.
I'm good with that.
Yep. You should be writing the explanation.
I will help.
I don't. why are we doing this? We have to, because we write the bylaws.
Yes. Yep, all bylaw amendments come through the planning board.
This came about, do you remember, we had a recodification process, and one of the ways we got through it is we would say, oh yeah, this is just clarifying, cleaning up, not really changing something. Oh, but if we go that far, that's a real change. So as shorthand, the little group took up saying, oh, phase two, that's phase two.
Right.
So we built up this phase two list. Now we're working our way through the stinking phase two list.
Right.
And because it was easy to say phase two, there's a lot of them.
Now, the state has jumped in on this too? Is this what's?
No, this is just us.
Just us.
Just us.
Because there've been problems
Okay.
in the implementation.
Oh, so this is phase two.
This is phase two.
This is phase two.
Yep.
Right now, we've
So-
gone through 5 that would have to go to town meeting, 2 of which are simple definitional changes.
And I have to tell you, at the same time, so we're good with this home-based business
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And we are apparently swallowing this business about the ADU, and we think that we've done what we could with Mr. Cod. But today, we had a meeting of a subcommittee, actually, it's a working group
Yes,
of
short term.
short-term rental. And the short-term rental, we've held 4 public hearings. Melinda has been our staff person. 4 public hearings, I would say they were not well-attended, but some of the people who came were very passionate about the problems of short-term rentals in their neighborhoods. Anyhow, we got through it and decided and looked at what other towns are doing. We had really a pretty good backup on the research for this, and went through the changes we wanted to see, and asked Maura to please draft, Maura O'Keefe, to please draft a new bylaw for us on short-term rental. At which point it came up, well, no, it wouldn't be a bylaw. This would be a new regulation, or it would go in the general. It wouldn't come to us, because that isn't the way it would work best. In fact, the way it worked best in the end, it will be something that goes to the select board and is administered through the Board of Health and the Health Department.
So it won't be in 240.
Correct. It won't come to us,
So this,
but it will be at town meeting.
not our job.
Non-conforming structures comes to us, though.
Non-conforming, that's us. And I am wondering if you want time to look at that?
I would like to have time to look at it.
Yeah, I think you need time to look at it. And John, after all the time that you served on the ZBA, you're probably our best reviewer. Most of the talk in the working group, Noreen, and the new town lawyer that got assigned to us, there was one, he's gone. We have another one, and Pat and myself. So the idea was to lift up state law on nonconforming and make it visible and keep in whatever those people happen to want.
So, and thank you for that excellent segue. So on the zoning bylaw recodification and review webpage that we have under the planning department page, down at the bottom are upcoming agendas for our meetings. So we've got our planning board, or our, darn, it's not connected. Regardless, we have an agenda, which we'll be talking about all of these topics that we've just highlighted tonight. And all of these videos here, John, if you're really interested in what the working group has been talking about for the last 3 meetings, we've been talking about Article 10 and some of the changes that are important. Bob Ritchie has gone through the reason for making these changes to our non-conforming section to comport with state law and other regulations. So it's a really interesting listen if you're really interested in that. And you can get a sense for where we started and where we're at now and everything in between.
So which is the one that we'll be talking about, or All of them, or just which one?
We started in May. I need to upload the most recent 2 meetings, but we started in May, we did one in June, and I want to say we did 2 meetings in July, where we only talked about Article 10.
Okay. Can you send a, when they're all up, would you just send a note out to watch this? Because that's, I would like just to
Yep.
watch the meeting get caught up. I'm totally unprepared.
They're all on FCTV's webpage right now and on the YouTube channel. We just haven't linked them to the webpage itself, but that's an easy thing.
Jed, who will be presenting this to town meeting, the non-conforming?
I'm sorry?
Who will be responsible for presenting this to town meeting?
Rock, paper, scissors?
Chairperson.
Well, I think it should be a ZBA person.
So
This is what they work from.
I think we need to, likely you and I, need to at least be able to articulate what the changes are being made in Article 10. Now, my intent is when you open the planning or the public hearing, is to have a presentation that describes briefly what these changes are and shows it up on the screen for the public, right? With Article 10, I'm not sure whether or not it makes more sense to have Bob Mitchell come and go through that himself, so that everyone's aware of all of the intricacies of 40A Section 6, which is, it's a bear itself. So I'm going to reach out to him, see if he's willing to come down. If he's not, we'll still have a presentation to articulate exactly what those changes are.
Okay, because I think we really need someone, and I know it isn't me, who can go beyond these surface changes
Yes.
to what if, and be able to think it through with full knowledge of it.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about doing a pre-recorded video for town meeting, provided that they allow me to do it. So we just had our open space and recreation plan open house, and we had a recording going in the background on a PowerPoint presentation that people could just watch and listen to. And it's very simple to just voice over the important parts, but be able to do it on a screen that everybody can see versus the screen up at town meeting, which is sometimes hard to
Difficult, right.
actually see that. And send that to folks in advance of town meetings so that
So,
they really want to
where
know.
are these changes, Article 10? Are these state mandated changes we're dealing with?
Well, yes, I mean, yes.
Why are we doing this right now? We have so many other things going on. We have to deal with this now, and that's because the state changed the law?
No, you
No,
have
it's
to
not.
remember, when we did recodification,
Yeah?
we had already prepared, and we're bringing forward Article 10 for nonconformity, because it is part of our existing bylaw. And we thought in improving it, because so much of what really controls what happens with nonconforming lots and so forth is in state law rather than in our bylaw, that we would lift up some of the state law and put it where you could see it.
Right.
So, when it turned out that the Attorney General thought we didn't fully explain the issue about changes, remember that part?
Yeah.
Right. So we took it out. We said, to change, phase 2. So here it is, phase 2. But it's the same thing. It's not different.
And I think it's important to just articulate that it's not necessarily that the state changed the law, it's that our bylaw wasn't consistent. Our bylaw is so old in the nonconforming
Can't go
section.
all
It didn't
10
match.
years ago. We just haven't caught up.
It just is not up to snuff. And so that was one of the most important items that, before I got here, that the working group at the time, when meeting with Bob Mitchell and Bob Ritchie, were saying, look, we really need a new non-conforming section because it's just not doing it for the town. So they drafted a new one, and Charlotte just went through the process of how we had to drop it, come back to the original version because we didn't want to anger the Attorney General again, and so, we just, so now we're back with a substantive change that we originally wanted to make back in 2021, but we weren't able to. That's a lot.
The other reason.
So this is all basically a result of recodification.
Yes, yes,
Right, and Pat
because, go ahead, sorry.
remembered another reason for this, let's call it new, Article 10.
Was scattered throughout the bylaw.
There's that too. Yeah.
So you couldn't say, oh, well, that's non-conforming, because, well, that is, and that is, and that is, all over the bylaws.
Sort of left the ZBA free to make it up as they went.
So as you remember, and what I discovered, shortly after coming here, was that the original recodification not only included some just reorganization, but it did include some, decent changes, one of which was Article 10. That, all of the draft document, that draft red line information was sent out to local attorneys. It was reviewed by the working group internally, staff and whatnot. And so that's where phase 2 was created, because the comments that came back were, well, this is out of date, this needs to be fixed, and yada, yada, yada. That ended up being way past what recodification was meant to be. And so that's where phase 2 is, oh, well, that's a change, we're gonna need to shift that out to phase 2. We've got a list of, over a dozen items, dozen sections of the zoning bylaw that we need to look at and potentially amend. So we'll be at this for quite a bit. I'm just hoping that I continue to have hair here at the end of it.
What if we don't come to a final conclusion? Obviously, we're not going to by Friday on this. Are you going to submit it as
That's
kind
Mr.
of?
Cod, isn't it?
No,
What is that?
non-conforming.
Oh,
We're going to submit it as a placeholder, hoping that we can get to that point.
Yes,
And if
because you
we-
can ultimately pull it.
Yeah, that's what I was getting towards, okay.
Yep. It's just been a lot to get through, and, I apologize. We wanted to start this process earlier, we just weren't able to get there, so here we are.
I think when it comes to town meeting and we're changing a bylaw to comport with the state regulations, they usually
No, I think
go
they
along with
said
it,
one
so
sent
I don't know if we really have to get in the weeds with town meeting with
this is
this.
Jim's.
I don't know. We had a simple explanation for why we're doing it.
Right.
So we're gonna say, these are all things the state made us do?
Yeah,
Try that
But
route.
I didn't see
yeah.
an article.
State
Might
made me
add a
do
little
it.
bit to that.
No, because can you see getting into
So
the
it doesn't
weeds
get
with,
rejected?
town
my head
meeting?
around it, no.
You know, and people are gonna start arguing about
I've been
section 2
ignoring
of,
phase 2 and thinking I'm not even gonna have to deal with this.
Another set of
Big one?
One little bite at a time.
Yeah.
This is a banquet.
And had it not been for the accessory apartment situation, we would have only had 3 amendments. But accessory apartments dropped in our lap, and the Affordable Homes Act, as did, So we were in some ways forced to make those changes now versus waiting and at a different date, so.
Okay.
Thanks.
We didn't include
Okay,
the
so,
non-conforming?
would anyone like to make, oh wait, we have other business. Are there any
We are, but
announcements?
We're not going over it tonight.
Or Paul, do you have a committee report?
None today.
Any other committee reports possible? John?
Last week, the commission voted to approve the 130-foot cell tower off of Gifford Street and Brick Hill Road
Oh,
by the
Gifford.
power lines.
Yeah,
It's all approved.
that's
It'll be coming
Gifford.
to us, but it's approved by the commission, so.
That's the one on Gifford.
Correct.
So will that take away the hole in West Falmouth?
No, they need more. They need one over by the church in North Falmouth, I think. No, I'm only teasing. It helps. It helps.
It does help.
And they've offered to have the fire department, police department be on the tower, no charge.
Well, they'll be right there. So do you attend by Zoom, or do you actually go there?
Mostly Zoom, but we've had 3 in person.
Um,
Usually the decisions, or if it's a classroom, it's in person,
uh-huh.
but not all the time.
So you're getting to know them and chumming up.
Yes. And
Good.
they're getting to know me.
This is good.
It is good.
It will help Falmouth.
Well, you're gonna be one of the most knowledgeable people they could ever have.
I don't know if they know that or not.
Well, with your
Or
time,
believe that.
with
so.
your experience, business, and time served on boards, I mean, that's pretty incredible.
For sure. I have some things to contribute. Well, we've had hearings on Chatham and Truro and Yarmouth, and so it hasn't just been Falmouth.
No. No, but often enough. Okay,
Have
now,
we ever said no to cell tower yet?
Not, this is the only one I've been
I
involved
don't
with.
think they have. See them.
doesn't mean they couldn't.
Well, there's something to like the federal
The
government.
federal government weighs in the end.
But they have control over the height. That's part, and the town has control over the height.
Okay.
We're not going to keep pursuing that cell tower problem.
But that's the only report I have.
Thank you. Are there any announcements? Paul?
Yeah, I got a couple. One is to the efforts of the town planner and the liaison for Shiver's Pond. An application was submitted for additional funding to complete the Shiver's Pond project, and that was approved at the last CPC meeting.
Very
Oh,
nice.
fantastic.
Thank you.
And did you see they're weeding up there or over there?
And secondly, the DPW has pulled up some weeds at Shiver's Park, and it was very overgrown last week, so the efforts of Mike Kasperick from Conservation got a dozen people together last Friday pulling weeds, and for 2 hours we pulled weeds. Marilyn was the only woman there, but we had a bunch of people, and it looks a lot better, but it's only a portion of it. They have to do a lot more of it. So that was a very positive thing. And the last thing I wanted to mention is Ralph Herbst, whom you all know, was a former chair of this committee for probably 10 years. He has a very interesting letter to the editor of the Falmouth Enterprise last Friday that's worth reading. He raised the issue of the planning board and local comprehensive plan with respect to Saxon Partners project.
Yeah.
And he went further to suggest that there be a lawsuit against the ZBA to stop the development of that project. I thought it was a well-written letter. Not sure where it's going to go, but you may want to read it.
I did read it.
I did too.
I was wondering, did you all happen to see it?
Funny, Ralph came to talk to me, he didn't even mention it.
No.
I saw it, he stopped in my office last week, he didn't even say anything about this.
Who would bring that? Where would the funding for that lawsuit come?
Probably have to be the abutters, I imagine. I don't know who else would do it.
It would depend on if the town took it up. Or an individual took it up.
But he went through a number of reasons why the local comprehensive plan addresses issues that are not being addressed by that project.
Mhm.
So I thought it was a well-written letter.
It was. Our next meeting?
And I'm glad you brought it up. It is September 10th. However, I did want to bring up, based on our conversation about the warrant articles, town meeting schedule, et cetera, the possibility of adding in 2 meetings. One, definitely, I think we should add. The second is a maybe. And so I just wanted to broach that topic with the group. So right now, your public hearing is scheduled to open on the 17th of September. We need to
On
add
the
that.
warrant articles.
Correct. We need to add that meeting, because that's not a regular meeting for you guys. We need to add that as a new meeting, clearly, because you're going to be opening the hearings. So as long as everyone's okay with that,
Yep.
we'll go in that direction.
Yep.
I also think that you may want to consider adding October 1st. So it would be 4 Tuesdays in a row, only because, as we just talked about, there's quite a bit here. And October 1st is only if we absolutely need it. If we find that the conversation is just so much, we may want to consider adding another meeting to allow for the public hearing process to unfold. Because we need to have final language to the select board's office by the 8th of, or the 9th of October, so that they can send it to the newspaper, or you vote your recommendations, but then they send it to the newspaper the following week. So all of that has to happen around that time frame. So again, it would be to add September 17th and potentially October 1st.
I have an uncomfortable thing to bring up, but I'd like you to read through, there's some kind of requirement when a member of the planning board does not attend certain meetings, what our steps are. To do Pam's not here.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And I
Yeah.
think, I think there's something after a certain amount of meetings, something happens.
Not if it's an elected board member.
That's only for appointed?
Yep.
Yeah, we've been looking at the situation, and
Okay, I'm confused. I thought it was for both. So as elected, that doesn't count. Okay, and you don't have to look it up
that
then.
individual can make a decision. And we've been keeping in touch with her, and she, up till now, she thought she'd be here tonight. I stopped in to see her after our last meeting, and she really was feeling better and was hoping that she would be back, but she's not, so I'll stop in to see her this week. Because it really, we need that other
Well, if we were
member.
getting into special permits, it'd be a real big problem.
Correct. You would need to have
We're-
5.
Paul?
Yeah, one final comment. There was a notice in the packet tonight about the Cape Cod Commission meeting with respect to the project on Nye Road, and there's a public hearing, and I assume it's because of the size of the project.
It is.
But it refers to the parcel that Habitat for Humanity is intending to develop of 7 acres. Last CPC meeting, as John knows, CPC approved $2.5 million for that project, so
Which is wonderful,
moving along nicely.
yeah.
I'm not sure why this has to have a public hearing like this, but maybe that's a requirement.
Anytime that,
Size.
yep, anytime that you divide land into, or a certain parcel of land over 30 acres into, I think it's additional housing units, but I can't remember. But anytime you're dividing up anything larger than 30 acres, it's a Cape Cod Commission DRI review.
Oh, and forgive me, I didn't ask you for a planning department report.
Well, I should say that there is an exciting development, and I mentioned it at the last meeting. We are gearing up for our parking management plan public meeting on September 12th. I meant to have a flyer for you, but I didn't have that. So we're publicizing that this week. So it'll be over at the Mullen Hall Elementary School. It starts at 6 p.m. I'm sorry, 5:30
That's on
p.m.
parking?
Yes. And so that will, our consultants will lay out all the parking data collection that we've done, the utilization analysis that they've done. They've also done a shared parking model. So there'll be a lot of information on display, but really what they want to try to get at are these recommendations that they're proposing, something that the community would support.
What date is that?
September 12th,
Time?
Mullen Hall
Yeah,
Elementary.
you can put on hold the two things I've been pushing you on, okay? The highway, the scenic road on Mill Road, and what was the other one? The definitive plan change, we can put them after town meeting. Those things are so, you have so much more to deal with than that now, I don't understand how we were gonna do it. I didn't realize how the situation we're in, this,
Yeah, phase 2 looming.
yeah.
What time traffic? What time was the traffic?
5:30.
5:30.
I didn't realize that, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's been
Oh, it's really, no, but I kept thinking, oh, that's next year. It's next year, it's this year.
now. In that case, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nicely done. Thank you.